Hunter Biden has pled guilty to 3 felonies and other charges in the tax evasion case. Big news. We'll talk about this. The new polling, the new prediction from Lichtman, the professor with the keys to the election, says Kamala Harris is going to win. Nate Silver, on the other hand, says Trump has a 2-to-1 chance to win. So they're at odds in this case. It's going to be particularly interesting. We'll go through all this stuff. Republicans have subpoenaed Tim Walz in a, what was this, a fraud case? What was this? The COVID fraud?
Yep, that's right. COVID fund fraud.
And then, oh boy, Tenet Media and Lauren Chen's YouTube channels have been deleted. They're gone. I do have an announcement and some news in the matter that I can now share with you. I've been contacted by the FBI as a potential victim in a criminal case. They have requested a voluntary interview as they believe I have information relevant to this ongoing criminal investigation. And I intend to provide assistance. That's all I can say on that matter because, as I mentioned, it's an ongoing criminal matter. Everyone in the world is messaging being like, oh, you got to have a lawyer, you got to have a lawyer. Dude, we're a corporation. We have like a bunch of lawyers. So we know exactly what's going on. So before we get started, my friends, head over to castbrew.com, buy Cast Brew Coffee, support our coffee business. We're trying to launch these coffee shops. We're working towards that. And hopefully soon we'll have these clubs up. We've been trying to get it going, but unfortunately for us, we chose a historic building for our first location. It is what it is. Also, head over to timcast.com. Click Join Us to become a member and support our work directly. As a member, you get access to our members-only show, which is going to be up at 10 p.m. tonight, where you as members get to call in. And you'll also be supporting us because I do have another update. We have made some movements. We are getting very close to the point of filing our lawsuit against the Kamala Harris campaign for defamation. And it is getting there. If you want to support us in this endeavor, if you want to support us in all of the legal endeavors we are now involved in, how fun. Please consider becoming a member at timcast.com. As I stated this earlier in the year, our legal fees are probably going to be high, considering the election is coming up. Now that we're about 60 days away from the election, indeed, we as we're the biggest live show on YouTube for the time slot, one of the biggest podcasts in the country and the world. Not the biggest, but we're big. And of course, that puts a target on our back. If you support the work, you want to see it continue, you think we do a good job, timcast.com, click sign up, become a member, support our work. But don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends. Joining us tonight to talk about this and so much more is Rep. Chris Lonsdale.
Happy to be here. So I'm Chris Lonsdale. I'm a state representative for House District 38 in Missouri. So that's the Kansas City suburbs.
Right on. Well, should be fun. Thanks for hanging out.
Yep. Thanks.
We got Libby hanging out.
I'm Libby Emmons. I'm here with the Post Millennial. I'm glad to be here tonight.
I'm glad you're here too, and you have no connections to the mob. Just want to make that clear to everyone.
Just throw
Libby
that out
strongly
there.
denies any implications tied to the mob. I'm Hannah Claire Brimla. I'm a writer for SCNR.com at Scanner News. Follow their work at Timcast News, and let's get started.
Here we go from the Post Millennial. Hunter Biden pleads guilty to 3 felonies, other charges in tax evasion case. Biden's lawyers first attempted to enter an Alford plea, which would have seen Hunter Biden plead guilty but maintain his innocence. His attorneys later agreed to a standard guilty plea after an exchange with prosecutors. According to the Daily Mail, Judge Mark Scarsey told the president's son that he could face a sentence of up to 15 years in prison and a $1 million fine once convicted of the 3 felony and 6 misdemeanor counts. In entering a guilty plea, Ab Lowell said his client did not want to cause more difficulty for the family. Your Honor has basically indicated that there's a need to address the public interest, but Mr. Biden also has to address the private interest. This has been a difficult time for him and his family. Enough is enough. They attempted the Alford plea, which we read in the subhead. Special counsel David Weiss alleged in the indictment that Biden engaged in a 4-year scheme to not pay at least $1.4 million in self-assessed federal taxes he owed for tax years 16 through 19, or from in or about January 17th through about October 15, 2020, and to evade the assessment of taxes for tax year 2018 when he filed false returns, blah, blah, blah. Very, very interesting. Libertarians are probably screaming in defense of Hunter Biden because he's been charged on gun rights and taxes. And of course, libertarians are very much on the other side of these things. But Libby, you had a good point as to why he took this plea deal and why it's going down. So what up?
Yeah, so I was kind of thinking that maybe he took the plea deal now and got the conviction out of the way so that there's still time for his father to pardon him before he's officially out of office.
But Corinne Jean-Pierre came out today and said, no, Joe Biden's sticking with what he said in Delaware. He's not going to pardon him. It is interesting because you would think, and I heard a couple other analysts talking about this today, it's his only surviving son. He doesn't have a political career after this. So why wouldn't President Biden just go ahead and pardon him?
It wouldn't be the first time that the White House has gotten Joe Biden's motives and plans wrong. I mean, the White House told us repeatedly for months and months and months that Joe Biden was going to stay in the race, that he wasn't going anywhere, that he was definitely planning on, continuing his run for presidency. And that was all upended by Joe Biden one Sunday afternoon, who just casually said that he wasn't going to do it. So, I think there's every reasonable expectation to believe that Joe Biden would pardon his son. And, this may be a hot take or whatever, but I think that's probably that's what I would do.
He's going to do it.
I would do it.
Yeah, I think he's going to do it.
I think the Alford plea play was actually the most interesting part because that is an acknowledgement that there is enough evidence against you that you will be convicted. And the prosecutors were resistant to this. They were saying, like, he committed crimes. You shouldn't let him get away with this plea. And there was resistance, and ultimately he had to just plead guilty. Do you guys remember that sweet plea deal he had for a while? Where it was like, you can't charge him with anything else. They had rolled the tax evasion and the gun charges together. Yeah. And now he's pleading guilty without any agreement on the table. He's facing 17 years in prison. I don't think he'll get that, but...
Why are they charging? Why was he charged?
Why was he charged?
Why was he charged?
You mean, like, why did they finally get around to charging him after the IRS agents for years were like, hey, maybe there's something going on here?
Yeah.
I think they did it so that it was like almost to run cover for all of their other charges so that they could say, like, see, we're not charging Trump politically. We're also charging Hunter Biden, And I think that's a big part of it. And also, I think that Hunter Biden was the... was the guy who was determined to get thrown under the bus. Like, he was the one who was, set up by the family. Somebody had to take the fall, and it may as well have been the guy who was already looking pretty bad in the public eye.
Yeah.
I think he's being thrown under the bus in part to protect his father.
Yeah.
Because the House still has, right? Like, the House has an impeachment investigation open.
Yeah. And I could see him being kind of the sacrificial lamb. So,
yeah, exactly.
And then also, the FBI, all these agencies are like, see, we're not partisan. We're not weaponized. We go after both sides.
Yeah.
And we clearly know that the Hunter Biden treatment is not even on the same level that they've treated Trump.
When Biden came out, however many months ago and said, no, I believe in law and order in this country. And if he is convicted, I'm not going to pardon him. I think that is part of the attempt to save the Biden legacy because they are really known, I think, by both sides as a somewhat corrupt or somewhat shady family. I mean, I don't even think Democrats, because with Hunter Biden, it wasn't just the Burisma stuff. It wasn't just his connections to owning that gun, but he's acknowledged very publicly in his memoir that he's an addict. You could have sympathy for that, but he does treat the people around him pretty terribly. And then there was all of the coverage of the legal battle over his daughter, Navy, who he wasn't acknowledging, Joe Biden wasn't acknowledging. And so in some ways, I think being able to sort of summarize Hunter Biden's crime as being like, it's the gun thing, it's tax evasion, we're not going to talk about anything else, is the Biden family attempt to sort of to lock this up and move into like gold plating Joe Biden's legacy.
We do have another story too, which we'll get into later in greater detail, but it's a DOJ it's the chief DOJ guy for public affairs in New York saying that they are engaged in lawfare against Trump. He's in a private setting saying, like, it's a travesty of justice what they're doing to Trump. They're going after him. And so without getting into too much of that, because we will get into it later, what we're looking at with Hunter Biden very much just feels like we're going after the Bidens too. Mm-hmm. Yet we're all wondering why Jack Smith is still so adamant about getting Trump indicted and the superseding indictment pertaining to documents, but Joe Biden is not being charged in this regard.
Yeah, I mean, that is a very dodgy situation where Robert Hur, we talked about this the other night, where Robert Hur said that Biden was essentially too sympathetic, that no jury would convict him. But the circumstances of the absconded documents are so incredibly different in those two cases. Like, on the one hand, Biden wasn't entitled to have them at all. They covered it up. Merrick Garland went as far as to, refused to comply with a congressional subpoena, which is absolutely insane. And then his staff at the Department of Justice said that they were not going to charge him, even though charges were recommended by the House, right? I mean, and then one thing that happened too was you had, and Anna Paulina Luna was really interesting in this regard, but you had Garland come out and say, you know, if I'm going to be congressionally subpoenaed and be forced to turn over documents as part of our investigation, that's going to be a problem because it will prevent witnesses from feeling in the future that they could trust the Department of Justice. But you equally had Luna saying, if congressional subpoenas have no teeth, then Congress can't do any investigations. And pretty much all the GOP has right now is the ability to do investigations, and they're necessary investigations. They're bringing Andrew Cuomo in next week to discuss the, COVID nursing home deaths. I have a whole lot of things that we could say about that. They've been bringing people in to deal with the impeachment. They've been impeachment investigation. They've been dealing with the Weaponization of Justice Committee has been doing some really incredible work. You have Jim Jordan out there with the Facebook files, literally uncovering government collusion, censorship on social media platforms. This is what's been going on. I think Garland probably should have been arrested and charged and tried for.
I love Merrick Garland.
Yeah, he's your favorite. I know.
He's a good guy. He's just
best.
One call from the FBI.
Well, hey. He's attractive and handsome, accomplished.
Well, you know what, though? Here's the thing is no one is above the law, as your buddy
Except
Merrick
him.
Garland likes to say. He is very fond of saying that, except he apparently believes that himself and his boss, big guy Joe Biden, are above the law.
Yeah, he should be in jail. Merrick Garland should be in jail. And Merrick, it's not personal. It's that you're in contempt of Congress, and that's what we do.
There's this crazy thing called due process, and every American is entitled to it under the Constitution. And that should be, lawyer up, Mr. Garland. That should be what's going on, but it's not.
Part of it is that he sees himself as the law? Like, there is no reason to challenge him because he is the arbiter of what is okay.
He is the top cop in the country, for sure. Mm-hmm. And I think we're seeing that with a whole lot of Department of Justice things going on this week. There's the RT thing. There was the 32 internet domains were seized. The doppelganger domains, they were seized. I opened up my my Department of Justice emails that I get because they send out press releases about every case. Mm-hmm. And I scroll through them to see what could be good stories. Those things are packed the past couple of days. They are chock full.
Yesterday was crazy for them.
Yeah, there was like 4 pages of press releases about convictions and trials and charges and all kinds of things.
Yeah. Kind of crazy.
Yeah. And it's kind of like also maybe Merrick Garland knows that his time is coming to an end.
That could be a
And he's gotta like clean his, I don't know if docket is
we
the
are
word, but
we are what, 60 days, 61 days?
something like that.
61 days. Yep.
61 days, man. That's crazy. And to be fair, it's not even 61 days because early voting starts, a month out?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to this idea of an October surprise, it very well may be coming any minute.
Yeah.
And it is turning the news cycle. I mean, we talked about this after Joe Biden announced he was leaving. The news cycle was dominated by how badly he had done in the debate. And then it was the assassination attempt in Butler. The only way the DNC was able to get control of that was by swapping out their candidates. Then it became all about who is Kamala Harris, what is she doing, who's going to be your VP, who are these people, all the way through the DNC. And now we get this moment where it could start to turn to be critical. And instead, the federal government is like, here's 27 different press releases about things that we could have been talking about all year, but instead, for some reason, we never did. Like, fascinating. One of the things that came up yesterday was the DOJ announced that they're investigating 2 prisons in California for the sexual abuse of female inmates, which... Why now? Why didn't you start this in January? What have you guys been doing?
Who are they alleging has been abusing them?
It looks like they're saying officers, but I had the same question. I think you do, which is like, are you saying other inmates that might biologically be male?
Perhaps because there is an inmate who is, I think, going on trial for, he's a man. He's in the women's estate, and he has been amazingly abusive.
Mm-hmm. It happens in a lot of states. But again, like the DOJ has suddenly thrown a lot of stuff out there, and that is what the news cycle is focusing on. Now, as someone who talks about the news, it is sort of nice to not have to talk about the election constantly all the time, 24/7. On the other hand, if you're an effective government, why wait? Why did Merrick Garland choose now versus, 6 months ago for some of this stuff?
Well, speaking of the election, On to the next story from CNBC. Harris will beat Trump, says election prediction legend Alan Lichtman. And this is interesting, ladies and gentlemen. Nate Silver currently has it for Trump. That could change. Lichtman currently has it for Kamala Harris. This doesn't make sense. Now, Lichtman predicted accurately that Donald Trump would beat Hillary Clinton, and they made fun of him. They were like, you're crazy. He went through his prediction model and said Hillary Clinton is going to lose, and the media laughed and said she can't lose. Are you nuts? Now Lichtman is predicting that Kamala Harris will win. The only time he was wrong is when he predicted, I think it was Al Gore was going to win. I think he predicted Al Gore.
Yeah, that's right.
But then it wasn't a normal election considering how it turned out. So some say since the 80s when he began this model, he's never been wrong. 2000 was an anomaly, so we don't count that. Maybe you should. I kind of feel like he's full of it. Let me show you. So they say the results are in. The Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris will defeat Republican rival Trump in the November 5th election, according to the historian named the Nostradamus of presidential elections. In his latest election prophecy, he, an American professor, blah, 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 is predicting Harris is going to win. The Democrats will hold on to the White House, and Kamala Harris will be the next president of the United States, Lichtman said in the video. At least that is my prediction for this race. His forecasts are based on a historical index model he dubs the keys to the White House. The way it works is there are 13 true-false statements. If 6 or more of the statements are false, then the challenger, in this case, Trump, is predicted to win. Here are the keys and his determinations. I got to say, before I read his... Actually, let's do this. I'll read the keys to the White House. It is 1, party mandate. 2, no primary contest. 3, incumbent seeking re-election. 4, no third party. 5, strong short-term economy. 6, strong long-term economy. 7, major policy change. 8, no social unrest. 9, no scandal. 10, no foreign or military failure. 11, major foreign or military success. 12, charismatic incumbent. And 13 is uncharismatic challenger. Now, his determination is that only 3 of these statements are false. Therefore, Trump cannot win. But let's go through his assessment. Party mandate. After the midterm elections, the incumbent party holds more seats in the U.S. House than it did after the previous midterm. False. That's good for Republicans. Contest. There is no serious contest for the incumbent party nomination. True. Whoa, 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 whoa,
Yeah,
whoa.
I think you're onto something with this one.
Dean Phillips, RFK Jr., and you had a bunch of other Marianne Williamson.
I mean, there were primaries that said not Joe Biden, right? Like there was
also
contest over
in Minnesota and
Yeah, that's what I'm
Michigan.
referencing.
Yeah,
Well,
and-
even
and
the whole
Washington
thing
State.
with the uncommitted voters.
Yeah.
So
So this was very seriously contested. RFK Jr. was running for the Democratic ticket. They blocked him from it, so he turned independent. He was running
filed lawsuits against him in
right.
yeah.
every
Which
state.
a funny point he brought up is they kept suing him to keep his name off the ballot. Now they're suing him to keep his name on the ballot.
Right.
How about that? So he said, there is no serious contest for the incumbent party nomination. True. I feel that's false. There was a serious contest for it. It was a matter of huge contention how they handled the primary to keep people out. So maybe his argument is it doesn't matter. All that matters is the primary didn't happen. Perhaps his argument is his model is not based on whether or not people were challenging him. It's based on whether or not there was an actual election where the incumbent almost lost.
So basically, he's saying that because the incumbent party was so powerful and used lawfare so effectively, there was no primary.
I guess,
challenge.
which doesn't make sense. If the argument is when there is a serious primary contest for the incumbent party nomination, it shows disdain for the current candidate, and many of those people won't vote. We absolutely have that in RFK Jr. So let's continue. Not to mention the incumbent party victor of the primary is not the candidate. Let's just make that clear. The guy who won the primary is not the candidate. So this is weird. Incumbency. The incumbent party candidate is the sitting president. False. Seems strange because it's right.
It is false, but this whole
It's
model
Kamala.
seems to not acknowledge the fact that she is actively part of the incumbent administration.
Right.
I mean, when it works as if when they don't want her to be, when it would benefit the model, she isn't, and when it would hurt her or help her, like, it kind of goes back and forth whether she's a part of this or not.
But we'll read it verbatim. She is not the sitting president. I don't know how many times that has happened, and I don't think it's ever.
No, I
The
don't.
sitting president. Well, no. That's wrong. During elections where the president is termed out and the vice president is running, like say Al Gore or whatever, then this clearly becomes the issue. So let's just say, fine, we'll give him the false. It benefits Trump anyway. There is no significant third party or independent campaign. I'll actually agree that's true. Short-term economy. The economy is not in a recession during the election campaign. True. Full stop. Are we in a recession?
Not
If
yet,
it
are we?
feels like it, I don't know, it's not officially a recession, but
Exactly. So this is the question. If you go around and ask people, as even Don Lemon did, who are you voting for? They say Trump. He says, why? He was in Atlantic City and they were like, the economy. And Don Lemon's like, no, the economy's good. Well, people don't feel it. So the question is not, I don't think you can say, are we in a recession? I think the question is, do people feel bad economically? Because it's the economy, stupid.
Yeah, the other thing too is I was reading a report this morning. Groceries hit like an all-time high in July.
What did?
Groceries.
Prices for it.
Prices for groceries.
And people can feel it. Number 6 is long-term economy. Real per capita economic growth during the term equals or exceeds mean growth during the previous 2 terms. True. That one's fine. That's an economic academic statement. I have no problem with that. The short-term economy, I think, would likely be false because people are feeling the heat. But you know what? We're not in a recession, so I'll give that one. So let's just say this. So far, we have 1 is false, 2 is false, 3 is false. We have 3, so there's 3 more. Policy change. This one's fascinating. The incumbent administration affects major changes in national policy. True. What? Kamala Harris is not offering any change. The Inflation Reduction Act already happened. The policies that they've proposed, they've enacted, what change would they possibly bring about as the same administration?
Well,
I think what he's playing here is he's treating this as though the vice president taking over is as if a 2-term president is termed out and an ambitious VP is taking over. It's the same administration.
Yeah, and also the one thing that where I would say that they are attempting to affect change isn't actually working, and it's certainly not working in any sort of public way, which is they're trying to pull back on this border after letting in, I think even the New York Times says 9 million people over the past couple of years, and Marjorie Taylor Greene says 20, right? So there's a big difference, but they're trying to affect some kind of change with the amnesty program. They put a pause on their parole program to allow in, 30,000 extra people per month from, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Cuba, and Haiti. They're trying to do that, but it's not actually working because you still have, a lot of reports of crimes committed by illegal immigrants, like really violent ones, child rape and things like this.
Do we all agree that's false?
Yeah, I think it's false.
He said true. I believe if Kamala wins, it is stagnant. Same policies, the war advances, the border doesn't change, she's the border czar. He put true. That makes literally no sense. There's no major change in national policy should she win. False. That's 4 falses, 2 more, and Trump wins.
And talking about the immigration, is like when you look at the Biden administration, they're essentially playing a shell game when every time you see, immigration, like illegal immigration or visas are going down, well, they're just routing it through a different legal process. So immigration's not going down. They're just playing a massive shell game, moving these numbers around.
All right, so 8, social unrest. There is no sustained social unrest during the term. I don't know that we have sustained social unrest, so I'll call that true. That's fine. This is my favorite.
I would argue we are close to sustained social unrest with the Palestine stuff.
Oh, actually, fair point.
You know what I mean?
They're back on campuses. Like
and they're
the first day
protesting.
back on campus.
And they're
at Columbia,
protesting
They
him.
were going nuts.
And Kamala.
And her.
They
Okay,
were
so that's 5
protesting all
false.
summer.
That's a good point. They've been protesting nonstop.
And I want
to
to say, what was it, like 100,000 Palestinian protesters in Chicago at the DNC?
Yeah.
Like it was like just watching the videos, it was shocking to see just the sea of them.
So absolutely, I was wrong on that one.
We're
Fair point.
weeks away from the year anniversary of that. So that seems sustained to me.
Yeah.
There is sustained. So that's 5. Number 9, scandal. The incumbent administration is untainted by major scandal. True. What? The president was ousted in the 11th hour as the whole media said they were secretly withholding information about his cognitive decline. That's the incumbent administration. That's not just Kamala Harris. That's 6. Trump wins. But there's more. Incumbent charisma. The incumbent party candidate is charismatic or a national hero. False. I will agree with that. That's 7. Now, here's an interesting one. Challenger charisma. The challenging party candidate is not charismatic or a national hero. True. So this is interesting. Trump is charismatic, but he's also widely hated.
He's widely hated. On the other hand, he is obviously charismatic. He built a whole career in TV before he ever got anywhere. I mean, he just survived an assassination attempt. I'm sorry.
That's 8. And then, guess what? Number 12, foreign military failure. The incumbent administration suffers no major failure in foreign or military affairs. Holy crap. The Abbey Gates scandal is breaking now with the Gold Star families criticizing heavily the Biden administration and Harris for besmirching their name, for insulting Trump when they invited him. Not to mention Afghanistan was a major failure. Not to mention Israel is resulting in massive protests. That's 9. And last but not least, foreign military success. The incumbent administration achieves a major success in foreign or military affairs. False. That's 10 for Trump. How is this guy making these assessments? Maybe he's right. Maybe what he's actually doing is sitting there and he's being like, I'm just going to lie because the deep state's going to give it to Harris or whatever. Or maybe the news media for the first time has become so broken that this guy watching CNN doesn't understand reality. And so he genuinely thinks he's being correct on this. And it's not a fault of his system. It's a fault of where he gets his information.
Well, you mentioned with Al Gore that
really
was sort of
point.
an anomalous race. And I think similarly, maybe he is not able to judge how unusual this race is with the insertion of Kamala Harris. I mean, some of these metrics almost seem like they don't apply because when they reference the incumbent being, not charismatic, which incumbent are we talking about? The incumbent vice president or the incumbent president? You know what I mean? Like, it's just a weird situation.
I think the scandal question nails it. The incumbent administration is untainted by major scandal. This guy's plugged into MSNBC 24/7.
Yeah, because there have been several major scandals. There's been the classified documents scandal. There was the Hunter Biden, laptop
Pleading guilty
scandal.
literally right now.
There's Hunter Biden pleading guilty. There was cocaine in the White House scandal. There was, Biden getting pushed out at the last second scandal. There have been a lot of scandals and things like, not to mention just total policy failures that have been a really big problem that people have noticed. You have the border situation. That's a really giant disaster. If we remember going back to 2019 and 2020, you started to see, as soon as Biden started making a really big play for the White House, you started to see would-be illegal border crossers lining up south of the border wearing "Thank You Biden" t-shirts. They all knew the drill. It had been telegraphed to them. Everybody was aware of it. You've had countless administration officials hauled before Congress. You had Mayorkas outright lying. He said from the briefing room, I remember watching it, we're not saying don't come. We're saying don't come now. Let us get our system together. And then he lied to Josh Hawley and said that he hadn't said that. And it was well, you did kind of totally say that. You had the vaccine mandate push, and then you had, concerns were raised about that, rightly or wrongly. And then you also had lockdowns. That was a problem. You had the enforcement on the states. So I think that there have been a lot of school closures. That was an issue. And you had literally the Biden administration being told by teachers unions that were funding the campaign, this is what we want you to do with schools once you're in office. And that wasn't the only thing.
So let's jump to the story. This is the Silver Bulletin, Nate Silver's assessment and current presidential election forecast. And I want to make sure I stress this because the previous segment was talking about how Alan Lichtman, the professor who's gotten every election right except for 2000. And that was weird. But, he got it wrong. He did. He's predicting Harris will win based on his keys to the presidency. I think it's called model. And because it goes against what I want to happen, he's wrong. I want Trump to win, so he's wrong. And Nate Silver says Trump's going to win, so he's right. I don't know their data points, but in all seriousness, Nate Silver is now predicting, as of today, based on current polling, Trump has a 60.1% win probability to Harris's 39.7. A massive drop off for Harris. Trump is shooting up nearly 2-1 in Nate Silver's forecast model to win. The interesting thing about this is that Politico said recently that people should ignore the forecast models and the predictions because nobody knows. And at the time he said, well, it's too close to 50-50, so it doesn't really matter. But people actually can predict this. It's just that the failed news outlets and pollsters get it wrong and then say, well, nobody knew. When he's like, actually, we can tell. Now it's 60-40. Nate Silver's saying Trump's 60% chance to win. This is wild. Nate Silver is giving Trump a very, very strong path to victory with this probability right now. He's saying that Pennsylvania is going Trump 2-1. Look at this. Chance of winning 60.8%, Harris 39.2. He's going to win Arizona. He's going to win Nevada. He's going to win North Carolina, and then he's going to win Michigan and Wisconsin in this model. That's crazy. Narrowly, Michigan and Wisconsin. Nate Silver's putting it all. It's Trump right now. So who's going to be wrong? The statistics guy analyzing all the data and making a prediction, or the professor who has a 13-point system based on opinion that he's only been wrong one time? Who do we pick? Because either way, someone's going to be wrong.
I'm siding with Nate Silver.
Me too, because I want to.
Yeah. When you actually look at the fundamentals of the race, voter registrations are up for Republicans in almost every major swing state. Mail-in ballot requests, especially for Pennsylvania, I want to say right now, I think they're down 130,000 from the same point in 2020. So every fundamental data point outside of just opinion and spin pieces is looking pretty good for Donald Trump. So and I think it's going to get even higher, Trump's chances of winning after this debate. Because people are going to realize that, Kamala Harris is kind of dim-witted, is not charismatic. And, I don't think that she's going to come anywhere close to Scranton Joe and this kind of made-up mythos about Joe Biden. I don't think I think she's going to lose Pennsylvania by a pretty good chunk.
Yeah, I think that's why the first time that they brought Joe Biden onto a campaign event was in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I mean, I always thought if they didn't pick Josh Shapiro, that was a misstep. And I think in some ways it was her campaign saying basically we don't think we can win this state, because it doesn't seem like she has a path forward without it, which is fascinating. And I think you're right. The debate will be very telling. They just all these new reports coming out that they have agreed to do it standing with mics muted, basically the same rules that the Biden team had negotiated, even though the Harris campaign had come out and said, well, we want to be able to sit down and we want to do it this way. Yeah. Treat us exactly like the Joe Biden campaign by coming to this debate, but also give us completely new rules because we don't like them anymore.
And I think the muted mics, I think, actually helped Trump, because I think, he naturally, I think, probably reserves himself a little bit better and is not as aggressive. And he's kind of more succinct to the point. And I think that's good for him.
Well, and we got these really good moments where he would say, they would turn and be like, Mr. Trump, do you want to respond to that? And he was like, I don't know what he said, and I don't think he does either. I mean, it sort of saved him the chance to tee up really good lines when he knew the mic and cameras were on him. I think there's always a reason to be slightly skeptical of polls. Data models can be skewed, and obviously, you can get an organization that wants a certain outcome, and they're able to use the data so that they're able to get that. But I think what you're saying is that, Trump has popular support in the country, and that shows up. I was writing about Montana's Senate race today with John Tester and Tim Sheehy, and AARP, which released this report, and it underscored the fact that the majority of voters in Montana's elections in 2020 and 22 are older, and overwhelmingly older Montanans support Trump, and they also support Tim Sheehy. Montanans in general are leaning towards both Trump and the Republican candidate for Senate. But I think that this model gets ignored by mainstream media that wants to say, well, we don't know, anything could happen, and it's a lot closer than you think it is, because they don't really want to talk to average Americans. They sort of have something they're driving towards. They have a headline they want to print.
Yeah, and I also say this with the polling industry. Democrats generally have more money than Republicans in most of these races, and when candidates and parties are buying polls, they're doing it to push a narrative. So when people say, oh, polling is always wrong, and it's like, well, yes and no, but who is buying a lot of these polls? Democrats or Democrat adjacent groups. So you're naturally almost going to have kind of more of a left-wing bias in some of these polls, just because they're the ones putting up all the cash, so they can make the headlines and everything like that.
NBC was making a big deal out of this poll that they had released recently. They'd polled young voters, and I was listening to one of their broadcasts on it, and it seems like the next day they were sort of downplaying it because young voters had told them that their top issue was the economy, which I don't think this mainstream media outlet was expecting. I think they were expecting them to say, I don't know, abortion or, Palestine or whatever, something, a more social issue. But the reality is young Americans are trying to establish their lives, and a huge part of that is what kind of economic decisions they have to make every day. Do they put off buying a car? Do they think they'll be able to buy a house? Do they think that they can afford groceries? It's like these are the things that are actually on the minds of young Americans, even if a Democrat campaign like the Harris campaign is basically posturing as, well, it's Brat Summer and everything's vibes.
Yeah.
I think the economic vibes are more dominant and bad.
Just pay attention to all these issues that don't really kind of affect your life in a major way. But yeah, the economy, like, what do you guys do? What are you guys talking about? But, when I go back to my district and talk to constituents, talk to younger people that I represent, it's housing affordability, it's wages, it's being able to start a family. It's making sure that your kids aren't getting indoctrinated in the school system. And and all these things are like materially declining over the last 4 years, and largely over the course of our entire generation, our entire life.
Mm-hmm. I don't think Harris looks like she's going to turn the tables on any of this. I don't know how she could win support without getting better messaging on the economic issue. That's why they try to distract with things like abortion or marijuana or whatever.
She calls herself the underdog. I mean, I wonder if they're realizing that the media spin narratives, they aren't going to help. But I have been hearing that there are a lot in the area around us in Virginia, a lot of Harris signs.
I've been seeing a lot of Harris signs too, and especially in
Are they Harris wall sign? Because I walked past
Harris wall sign.
Okay, I walked past this one and realized that it was a Biden Harris sign, and they had just cut Biden off of it. So it's just like a yard sign thing, which I thought was pretty symbolic here.
Like, it's expensive to buy those.
And also, they were just telling me they're always going to vote Democrat. Like they don't care about, especially West Virginia is a dominantly Republican state. I can assume if you're an out and proud Democratic voter, maybe you're just trying to say we are the resistance and you can't make us vote for anyone but someone who is a Democrat.
To vote the other day in West Virginia.
You did?
Yeah,
that's great.
This will be the first time I have ever in my life not voted in New York. So.
Welcome.
That's pretty wild. And I even asked, I was like, do we have to show voter ID? And she's like, yep, and here's your voter ID card. And I was like, okay, I will put this in my wallet.
Early voting starts in Pennsylvania in 11 days. It's September 16th.
North Carolina's coming up too.
Mm-hmm. Wow, when in 7 days?
Pennsylvania is September 16th, 11 days.
Wow. And the 18th is Trump Prison Day.
Yep. That's Trump Prison Day. We'll see what happens. I think could they just haul him off to prison? Could they just be like, yes. You're going to...
What if he gets put on house arrest and has to hang out with Barron in their New York City apartment?
Right. I was talking to somebody...
That's where Barron's living while he goes to NYU.
About where they'd put him. They wouldn't put him in Rikers. They'd put him in Manhattan County Correctional.
Prediction is that they're going to put him in Rikers.
Well, but they couldn't put him in Rikers. They'd have to put him in MCC, which is right around the corner.
They would have to, you said?
Well, I forget who I was talking to, and I don't think he was talking on the record, so I think it's perfectly fine that I totally forgot. But
conveniently,
I was talking to this New York lawyer, who was saying that they wouldn't put him in Rikers, they'd put him in MCC, which is around the corner from where he was tried, anyway, downtown, on Pearl Street, and that's where they put Epstein.
Oh, yeah. Wasn't this a guest on the show? Right. We thought we all had this conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Then it wasn't. I'm mixing everything up.
Exclusive off the record conversation.
Weeks. No idea what's going on. But yeah, it wasn't exclusive off the record. I was imagining. What's funny is I was imagining sort of intimate conversation with me and this person and other people, and it was. It was
just live to a lot of people in this room.
Because this always feels like sort of an intimate conversation. That's funny.
What do you think's going to happen to Trump? Do you have a prediction?
I honestly, I haven't really thought a ton about it, just because I'm like, it's just so out of my control.
Do you think that's how a lot of Americans are feeling? We think about it a lot because we cover the news.
Yeah.
But a lot of Americans, the trial and stuff has sort of faded to the background for them.
Yeah, because it's just, we almost live in a hyper news cycle where it's just story after story, every day, every couple days. I think everything that's being done to him is a total injustice. But yeah, I honestly, I think they probably will put him in jail just to spite him. But yeah, I know, watching just some videos and reading some articles, that the Secret Service haven't actually made plans on how they would even protect him.
Mm-hmm. They were talking about it though months ago. They were saying that the Secret Service had considered it.
Yeah,
that was leaked somewhere.
I thought it was that it was leaked that they hadn't made any definite plans.
Right,
They were
yeah.
still waiting to see, but they were waiting to see kind of where he ends up or if he even goes to jail. But
And right now, I feel like the Secret Service is kind of has a reputation for being unprepared.
yeah,
Maybe giving things a chance. Not to be mean to all Secret Service agents, but just to reflect on this summer. When you're in your district, do people talk about the lawfare against Trump very much? How much does Trump come up day to day for you?
Actually, yeah, quite a bit. Most of it is just, do you support Trump? Like when I'm out door knocking, when I'm out talking to people, most Republicans are like, are you MAGA or are you, Trump aligned? And it's like, yes, it's part of the reason why I even got involved in politics. And most people are like, all right, well, I'm voting for you. So, that's definitely a big question because people, especially Republicans, are so used to getting backstabbed that, they want to know, like, what's your position on Trump? Like, what do you think about the guy? Because most of these people, a lot of them are Trump voters. Like they're going to show up for Trump, and they'll probably vote for other Republicans, but their main reason to going out to vote
Is Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's interesting how much of a draw to the polls he is, and I think the lawfare against him actually might motivate more people this year than ever.
Definitely. Yeah.
I mean, I think people feel like this is the last shot and a lot is at stake, but they also feel in some ways a deep loyalty to Trump that they it's worth the time and effort to go out and vote for him. I don't think people felt that way about Joe Biden. I really don't think they feel that way about Kamala Harris.
Yeah. I don't think so either. I think it would be hard. You'd be hard pressed to really be driven to go out and, vote for Kamala Harris, because you even saw after the DNC, there were a lot of Democrat activists and stuff coming out on their TikToks and talking about how they were not particularly inspired by this overwhelming joy and euphoria, and that they really wanted some answers as to what Kamala Harris was promising to do other than just be not Trump, which frankly isn't good enough. And I'm really curious to see what happens next Tuesday on the debate stage in Philadelphia.
Because you look at the Harris campaign so far, there really hasn't been a whole lot of substance.
Have they even put up any policies yet?
Still no policies on the platform.
Wow.
And every time,
So they affect no major change.
nothing.
So that Lichtman thing is ridiculous.
And every time she does come out with a policy proposal, it's either like widely blasted by people on her own side, or stolen from Trump. So that's pretty wild. And then the California Democrats came out and opposed a GOP measure to not tax tips. So
she's not even aligned with the state that at one point she claimed to represent.
You kind of start thinking that maybe she's lying too, on top of everything else.
And her whole policy of supporting, no tax on tips, it's totally because she realizes that Trump is totally on the money, totally over the target on that. And she's like, oh, well, I need to copy that so I can take that away from him because that is a popular issue and that can something that could be done. But
yeah, it's to neutralize the advantage that he has.
Let's jump to this story from louderwithcrowder.com. This is crazy. DOJ Chief of Public Affairs admits Trump indictments a perversion of justice, reveals lawfare involved. Absolutely crazy video. Louder with Crowder, Mug Club undercover unit released this video. And you have this guy, his name is Nicholas Biase of the Southern District of New York. He is his official title is DOJ Chief of Public Affairs. Outright saying Bragg was stacking charges and rearranging things just to make it fit a case. No, honestly, I think the case against Trump is nonsense. Every real estate person in New York does what Trump did. Nobody's ever been charged with this. It's all him. That's why. Trump is surging in the polls, it's a perversion of justice. Before he, Bragg, decided to prosecute Trump, did you know who he was? You do now, Alvin Bragg, who I've known for 15 years, who used to work in my office. Alvin is very ambitious. He basically goes into great detail about how this is ongoing lawfare against Trump to impact the election. And we actually have this, the New York Post covering it, saying top Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office spokesperson blasts DA Bragg over Trump prosecution in secret recording. The case is nonsense, he said. We do have a statement. Stephen Crowder says breaking update. Chief of Public Affairs Nick Biase, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, officially responded saying, I was recently made aware of a video where I regretfully made some statements in a private and social setting that don't reflect my views about two local and state prosecutions. I said these things in an effort to please and impress someone I just met who was secretly filming me. I'm deeply sorry to the local and state law enforcement officials working on these matters who deserve more respect than I showed them. I should have known better. I got something for you, guy. If you're willing to lie to a random person in public, What makes any of us think you're not lying to us now? So your words are all meaningless garbage. It's moot. Your statements mean nothing. If you can't own up to what you think or believe, you should be fired because you no longer have any credibility.
But who would fire him? He would be fired people who have even less morals and scruples than he does.
Was this a James O'Keefe media move where he was on a date with someone? Why is he trying to impress someone he had just met?
Well, this is something that's going on now. Like James O'Keefe has, with his OMG media,
Well, this is Crowder.
broken out and started training citizen journalists, and now they can be anywhere, even on Steven Crowder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's kind of fascinating.
Yeah, and it's amazing how open and candid they are.
The reality is,
Like, yeah, I'm a corrupt.
I wish he'd
son
double
of a
down.
gun.
He'd be like, I meant everything I said. This place is the worst.
the reality is this guy is terrified.
Yeah.
Of course he believes what he said in the undercover camera. And it's unfortunate, too, because before this statement, I was praising him, like, seems like a good dude who knows what's going on. We just need good people to speak out. And then he comes out and does the opposite and says, I don't actually think that. BS. He was so quick-witted with it. He knew exactly what he thought, and he thought he could say it because he was in private, but he's terrified what this means. You people, my guy, Nick, you gotta stop. You've gotta just admit it and say to the public, this needs to stop. Otherwise, they will come for you. Mm-hmm. You cannot survive ducking and hiding behind a counter and hoping the violent mob passes you by. The moment everyone just speaks up and says, enough of this, it all stops and you are at zero risk. But if you were to come out and say, of course I think these things. It was terrible. It was wrong. They shouldn't bring it. We'd be all like, bravo, sir, you're a hero. But you know what? They're scared.
Yeah, they are scared. Everybody's scared. And isn't that sort of the thing that happens? I'm hearkening back to novels from behind the Eastern Bloc, Russian, Soviet novels and from Eastern Europe. And this is what happens, right? Look at Solzhenitsyn. This is what happens. You have people start to be freaked out. They start to be scared. They couch their opinions. They lie. They obfuscate. They try to cover up and save themselves. And more, just the grip continues to tighten around the whole of society because each individual person is too scared to stand up on their own. And then you have, other people who you maybe think are your friends, and it turns out that they are actually backstabbing you or turning you over to somebody else or, reporting you to the authorities because you don't believe the right thing. And you said that and, at brunch one day. And so now they're turning you over because otherwise they're worried that they're going to be turned over or some authority has them over a barrel. So that is, that's what happens. That's what we have learned from the Soviet bloc nations and from the literary geniuses who were working behind the Iron Curtain. Václav Havel, I'm thinking of, primarily, or, even going back further, Franz Kafka or Solzhenitsyn or, Bulgakov, all of these guys.
And thinking about what he said about Alvin Bragg, that he was like, oh, he's an ambitious guy. It's like, that is total political weasel talk for, this guy will knife anyone in the back. This guy will do anything, totally unscrupulous. It doesn't matter if it's right, wrong, or in a gray area. Like, he's just in it for himself, trying to advance his political career. And you see this all the time in politics is like, and political insiders, always tout that. They're like, oh, he's ambitious. Like, he wants to go places. And it's like, well, yeah, because he's trying to sell his soul and do anything and everything to climb the ladder.
Yeah. And I think that's the problem with a lot of these positions. It's somebody's 15 minutes of power that they're trying to play into an entire career. I mean, it is interesting that this was sort of public knowledge that that this case had been rejected multiple times. Yeah. People didn't think it was worth doing. And all of a sudden you got one guy moved into the office and you got Alvin Bragg and they were like, actually, we've decided to bring this case. And even the judge, when he sent the jury to deliberate, was like, you don't have to actually decide on which of these, just kind of get a consensus going. We'll see what happens. Mostly, please give us a guilty verdict because that's what we want. I mean, I don't think that this kind of... I think this public affairs officer had a chance to really show that there is not just a monolith opinion in this office and present the idea that possibly you could trust a system like this. And it immediately was turned into actually he has to fall in line and we all are on the same page and we have definitively decided that no matter what, Donald Trump is guilty. I think that's not good for the American psyche. There's such a low trust in government and lawfare right now, and this is only making it worse.
Oh, yeah. And it totally vindicates what Republicans are saying is that, they are a lot of these bureaucracies are totally unified against them. And, this guy even is willing to admit, oh, yeah, like this is not fair. This is not right. But, when the hammer comes down on him, he's like, oh, no, what the system's doing, A-OK.
Yeah.
Absurd.
And it's the hammer.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is RFK was talking about this, the organs. That's what they always say in the old books. The organs of government, the organs.
Yeah.
It's the agencies that just swarm around.
Yeah.
Take everybody down.
And spend a lot of money. I mean, think
Yeah.
about how much money the federal government and the state of New York have spent trying to put Trump in jail or at least get some sort of guilty conviction. I mean, is that really the number one goal here? Do we think do we think these funds were used justly in a way that honors the contribution that taxpayers are making and the trust that elective officials have, somehow extracted from their voters? I don't think so. I don't think that this is really what anyone wants. I don't think Donald Trump, while there is a lot of Trump derangement syndrome, I don't think that Donald Trump's convictions have actually made anybody happy. It just seems like nothing is sticking, probably because there's not a reason to. And instead of saying, okay, well, we tried and we'll walk away now, there's just corruption within the system to prove a point.
Well, it's taxpayer-funded campaigning. That's
Yeah.
basically what they're doing. Yeah.
And I mean, again, this is one of the things that bothers me about mainstream media, but I remember they would run these stories, especially when this New York trial was going on, being like, well, Trump has not been on the campaign trail because he is on trial and Joe Biden's out here doing all these wonderful things. And then Trump would have these, interesting ways of connecting with the public. He did that event in New Jersey. He did something in the Bronx, and they would be like, ugh, can you believe he's doing this while he's on trial? It's like he's not even taking the trial seriously. Like there was nothing he could do to win in an impossible situation that he was turning into something that was benefiting his campaign.
Yeah. And it was actually, I was thoroughly impressed that like he would spend, 6 hours, 8 hours in a courtroom, and then like right after he'd get on the plane and go to a rally like nearby. And it was just like, this man is just a machine.
Meanwhile, Joe Biden gets ousted and then takes a 2-week vacation. I mean,
He can't even make his way up the stairs,
It is funny that people are pointing out the moment he dropped out of the race, he's just dropped all pretense of being president.
Yeah, he's just not even there. Even when he was talking the other day from, what was said to be the White House, he was behind like a little play school desk at a fake set. It was like it was COVID all over again. Remember when
People also pointed out that Kamala saluted some of the I don't know if it was Marines or somebody. She was boarding the plane. She saluted them, and then someone said something like, "Only the president does that as commander in chief. Vice president has nothing is not in this position. Should not be doing this unless she's the president."
Yeah.
well,
But
she
also
doesn't respect any
doesn't know
decorum.
anything.
Yeah, no.
She's a fool.
She's just trying to seem presidential. I'm sure she doesn't
Right.
actually care about any official protocol.
I saw somebody do this once before. Let me try it now.
The earbuds thing is funny because who has a phone with a headphone jack?
Right? Who has that anymore?
And, and in those photos, she just looks so pitiful. Like, is it like
It's
face
rough.
scrunched up? And it was like, ugh.
I loved watching Tim Murtaugh tweet about that because he
Yeah.
was like, if you're going to do this, then don't put the phone to your ear like you're taking a phone call. Come on. Like they set this thing up so she can try to politely avoid the press, which, I think she should just continue on her merry way of blatantly ignoring them because that's what she's been doing so far. I mean, do you guys remember that really amazing interview she gave us? Oh, wait, it wasn't amazing. It was very short and Tim Walz had to hold her hand through it. I mean, this is someone who doesn't care about anything and thinks if she just mostly tries to say nothing, she can win the White House. I think the American people deserve better than that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I tweeted out on that interview because like it was supposed to be an hour, and I think they only released like 30 minutes of it, and then it was like MSNBC or CNN was like, well, it definitely wasn't a touchdown, but like we think that she moved the ball forward a little bit, and it was just like if CNN is saying that, it's just like it was not good.
It was rough. I mean, again, why is she not doing this alone?
Yeah,
She's like the girl boss, and she needs a male chaperone.
Let's jump to this next story. We've got this from NBC News. Republican House panel subpoenas Governor Walz in investigation of Minnesota nonprofit that ran a COVID aid scheme. The group, Feeding Our Future, faces federal criminal charges that it created fake children's names to seek reimbursements for meals they were never served. They say the House Education and Workforce Committee issued subpoenas on Wednesday to Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, the Minnesota Department of Education, and the U.S. Department of Agriculture for how they responded to what federal prosecutors have called the largest pandemic fraud schemes in the country. The subpoenas obtained first by NBC News demand that Walz, Minnesota Commissioner of Education Willie Jett, and U.S. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack, and Agriculture Inspector General Phyllis Fong turn over documents concerning oversight of the nonprofit Feeding Our Future, which is alleged to have misused millions of dollars intended to feed children during the pandemic. There's what, hundreds of companies that were taking money illicitly?
Yeah, there were a lot. And in fact, in Washington state, there was a crazy Nigerian scheme where they managed to abscond with extra unemployment benefits, even though they weren't in the United States at all. There's no way to get those back. But there's photographs of Tim Waltz with some of the Somali Americans who were convicted of this fraud.
And it's $250 million.
It's really a lot of money.
A significant amount of money.
And they took the money to feed hungry Minnesota children.
Allegedly.
And they didn't do that.
Yeah.
They bilked the state out of the money. They bilked all of us out of the money. And they didn't feed any children.
I wonder if this is why Tim Waltz's family are endorsing Donald Trump.
It does seem like perhaps Tim Waltz wasn't actually vetted. You know what I mean? Like
they wanted Shapiro, but after the panic, they just said, Waltz.
Right. They just panicked after. And Shapiro would have outshined her because he's actually, like him or don't like him, he's actually a leader and he's well respected. And Tim Waltz seems like a total patsy. It doesn't seem like he has any idea about anything. He lied about his military record. He lied about, the way his children were conceived. And it turns out that maybe he was complicit in this. I have no idea, but he's going to have to explain it to Congress.
No, assistant coach Waltz is not trustworthy, and that just becomes more and more true every week. I agree with you. Maybe he wasn't vetted, but also they didn't really have any time, right? I mean, this is one of the issues with that Democrats have created for themselves by inserting Kamala Harris and not holding any kind of runoff primary by just saying, well, she's it, and whoever goes with her is who you have to back completely. They put themselves in a position where they didn't have the time, and also they didn't have the critical analysis to really comb through candidates. I think it would have been better for the DNC if they had allowed there to be basically a mini primary and had an open convention where Kamala Harris could have picked her VP or whatever else, but you would have had a bunch of challengers come out, and by the time they got to convention, probably one of the second-tier challengers would have become the VP. And then they would have presented their own record, and I think that would have been a smarter move because you would have demanded engagement from the voters in a way that they haven't right now. They demanded compliance from their voters right now, but they never asked them to actively engage in a process of selecting the new candidate.
Yeah. I'll just say this, just watching some of the videos with Governor Waltz, it's like he has such bizarre mannerisms. Like, I can't quite put my finger on it, but yeah, he's an odd fella. Just watching him kind of do the retail politics thing.
Missouri's not the Midwest, right?
No,
is it?
Yeah, we're a Midwestern state.
So,
I guess Southern Missouri, you'd be kind of like it's more Southern, but yeah, we're a Midwestern state.
So when you look at Tim Walz, you're not inspired. You don't think he's like a friendly dad from the suburbs, because that's what I keep hearing. Like all of these left wing talking heads are like, well, he connects with rural Minnesota men and rural Midwestern men. He just seems like
his own family.
A dad. Like, what are you talking about? This guy seems super weird.
No, yeah, driving around like rural Missouri or just like knowing people out there, like no one is like, wow, Tim Walz.
Coach Waltz.
Yeah, Coach Waltz.
Coach Waltz.
Yeah.
Or like how he was walking around today at that Pennsylvania event in Lancaster, and he was, he wouldn't take any questions, which he was, talking to volunteers or whatever. But one reporter tried to ask him questions, and reportedly the campaign people were like, "Do not interrupt the program," And you have Tim Waltz being like, "Hi."
It's so bizarre. Yeah. But
Is this a children's television show?
Yes, it was a program Tim Waltz was delivering to the volunteers of Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
Well, did he jangle his keys in front of everybody?
No, I don't think he did that.
Oh, I bet it would have worked.
What's that?
I think
It's what you
Coach
do for
Walz
babies.
and like
Jangle the keys.
his rural appeal is like the same thing with Scranton Joe. Is like the Democrats know they're hemorrhaging male voters, so they try to almost gaslight the American people. Like, no, he's just like you. He totally gets like your way of life and everything. It's like, I don't think most people even buy it. But
How old is he? 60?
He looks at least 65-ish now.
Let's look.
So that would make him. Is that still a boomer?
Well, I don't know.
So.
I think if
Born
you're
in
born in
1964.
so wasn't Kamala Harris also 64?
Yeah, they're boomers.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, they're the tail end of the boomers because
Yeah.
then Gen X starts in 65.
Really?
Yeah.
Gen X is 65?
That's when it starts. Yeah. No. It's like 65 to 79.
Yeah, she was born in 64.
You're
Yeah.
right.
So
65 to 80
Yeah. So
is Gen X.
Tim Walz and Kamala Harris are exactly the same age. She looks a lot better than he does. I will say that.
Well, she's probably paid to look that
She
way.
probably has.
Which I respect, you know.
But yeah.
So then boomers
She
are
definitely
81
has some, like-
millennials are 81 and up.
Yeah. That's the millennials.
Huh. Wow. Well, there you go. I guess it's weird because I don't see this guy as being relatable to Gen X
No.
and not boomers either.
No, he just seems to be kind of a big floppy weirdo.
Yeah.
Like a little pudgy.
weirdo talks like this.
Yeah, a little, doesn't really know what's going on. Eats pork chops on sticks. Come on.
Beef
My
and
kid
cheese
was
on
And
a
bring shame to
tortilla.
the campaign. You know what I mean? Like he's
Brings shame to the campaign. He's already had several
Tuna and
lying
mayonnaise
scandals.
tacos.
Yeah. My son was like, who eats pork chops on a stick? That sounds like it would just be really dry. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, it does sound like that. Yeah.
your son, the culinary expert, is like,
He is
that's
kinda.
disgusting.
I wonder if like when he was
really
doing the taco thing with Kamala, and then he was like, I have white guy tacos, and she's like, what's that? Like tuna and mayonnaise? I'm just thinking about this because like Kamala, have you never had a tuna wrap?
Yeah.
Like, did you ever go to like a deli or like a diner and like tuna
She
wraps
can't
are
even
on the
find
menu?
the Doritos out of Sheets, though.
Was she looking for the Doritos?
No, she sent her minions, Doug Emhoff and Tim Waltz.
Well, she was in it. And they threw the chips to her.
Yeah.
Because
I mean,
they're
could she not
fun.
find
They're
it?
friends. You know, they're on like this crazy cross country.
They're having a road trip. Yeah.
Meanwhile, the DOJ is going after Sheets for being racist for saying they don't want criminals to work there.
Right, right. And that's
wild.
just so ridiculous because how could it be racist to say you don't want criminals to work there?
Because it disproportionately affects black people, according to the DOJ.
I understand. But they're making an admission that perhaps they doesn't actually match their values. It's kind of weird.
Right.
Yeah.
I just can't stop. I'm just wondering who's going to be right in this prediction model. You know, Nate Silver is the stodgy nerd and Lichtman is more, I guess it's fair to say that Lichtman's predictions are just astrology for dudes. You know what I mean? It's like him looking at things and being like, well, based on what I think about these factors, Kamala wins. And we're like, well, he got it right a bunch of times before. That means he must be right now. And then Nate Silver is like, look at all the data, how it's lined up in the last several elections and where we are now with trends. I think Trump's going to win. And I'm going to go with Nate Silver.
Okay.
Yeah. They could have went with Shapiro, but instead they chose Coach Waltz.
I still think they should have picked Andy Bashir from Kentucky.
Oh, yeah, you still
He's
like
one
him.
of the. Well, I don't personally like him, but I think if we're.
I remember you liked him
Like,
for Kamala.
I think if Kamala was a serious candidate,
were like
she
a
would have picked.
matchmaker.
Right, she would have picked the blue governor in a red state, and that would have been, more likely to foil her. I mean, really,
But you don't
what
need
she wants.
Kentucky for anything. Like,
But she doesn't. I mean, she doesn't need anything anyways, right? Like she has to focus on Pennsylvania. If she's not going to pick Shapiro, then she's not very serious anyways. But at least Bashir, postures as a Christian. He has a different region of the country. She's basically using Walz as this punching bag to be like, you're a white man and I'm going to make fun of you. That's all he's there for.
He's the sitcom dad designed.
I think
loser.
Bashir would probably have more rural appeal than Walz.
And
like,
he's
all day, every
and
day.
he foils JD Vance in a better way. I mean, they're both young. They have young families. Anyways, Kamala
aren't
Harris
we
campaign.
lucky?
Sorry you didn't take my advice.
Yeah, aren't we lucky they didn't?
Yeah.
Although, I mean, the obvious choice was Shapiro, even outside of that.
Oh yeah.
Well, because he's actually.
I actually think that we would be
he's
in a little bit of
political talent.
trouble if they had picked Shapiro, because I think had Shapiro been picked, I think PA would probably be going blue.
Wow.
Because I think PA, or I think Shapiro is fairly well known in PA, and I think he's well liked just because he hasn't been in government for that long, so he hasn't really done anything too controversial that has turned public sentiment against him.
Yeah, and Nate Silver's prediction was he said that if Kamala Harris does not win Pennsylvania, her chance of winning drops to 4%.
Yeah.
So this is a win or like nothing. It's all or nothing in Pennsylvania, and they went with Waltz.
Yeah, pretty
That's
weird.
crazy.
Pretty weird.
And I think you're right. It doesn't seem like they vetted this guy.
Yeah, it seems like skipping Shapiro was like a desperate attempt to appease the anti-Semites who showed up at the DNC and protested and burned American flags anyway.
Yeah. All right, let's jump to the story from the Post Millennial from Andy No. Tenet Media founders were raided just as the DOJ indictment dropped. Holy crap. We got a bunch of updates here. The Blaze has fired Lauren Chen. And we also have the Washington Post reporting YouTube has taken down Tenet Media and Lauren Chen's channels. This is crazy. Absolutely crazy. So here's the report from the Post Millennial. Andy No says the founders of Tenet Media, the right-wing media startup accused by the U.S. DOJ of illegally taking nearly $10 million from Russian state actors to launder Russian influence, were raided on Wednesday as the indictment was unsealed, according to sources who spoke exclusively with the Post Millennial. The sources who are not authorized to publicly speak on record said the authorities confiscated the electronic devices belonging to Tenet Media owners Lauren Chen, also known as Lauren Yusum Tam, I didn't know that, and her husband Liam Donovan, around the same time the Biden-Harris administration announced the indictment. I don't think the owners had any idea about the investigation, one source said. The raid just came out of nowhere. Source said the couple, who are Canadian nationals living in Tennessee, had recently returned from a trip abroad. Chen, a right-wing YouTuber and social media personality, and her husband have not commented publicly. The company's social media accounts were still posting content just before the indictment was unsealed. Sources tell the Post Millennial that Tenet Media staff had been kept entirely in the dark since the indictment's announcement, with the founders not communicating at all with any employees or contributors. Tenet Media has not issued any public comment. Now, this is interesting. There was a quickly posted and deleted comment that said, "Fired employee here, access still. There is evidence we were actually funded by Russia, and it's a disgrace. We are traitors to America." And it was deleted within a few seconds. Very interesting. And now we have the Blaze has fired Lauren Chen. I don't think they've added much else after that. And then YouTube has terminated these channels. This is absolutely crazy. And, the one thing I can add to this, obviously, as we had a show licensed to Tenet, we do sponsors, right? And now we regularly have ad sales where a company will come to us and say, we'd like to sponsor your show. And it's immediately now like, who are you? Where are you from? Why are you doing this? Because the crazy thing about Lauren Chen is we've known her for so long. She's been a prominent producer for over a decade. She works for The Blaze. She was a contributor to TP USA. And everyone was just like, oh, yeah, she's starting a company. Sure. This is nuts. But the crazy thing I would also add is it actually is very scary. This indictment is an allegation not yet proven in court. And that's a statement from the DOJ. The DOJ said that. They said these are allegations not yet proven to be true. And these individuals are presumed innocent. And that's not in reference to Lauren Chen or Liam Donovan. The crazy thing is that YouTube took down Lauren Chen's channel. YouTube terminated Lauren Chen's channel. She's not been indicted on any crime. She's not been accused of any crime. She's listed in this document. There are some damning allegations, but she's not yet been indicted. And YouTube just nuked their channels instantly. Tenet, I could understand. But even after that, these are still just allegations, which is kind of worrying.
Yeah.
Well, on the Andy added an update which says, shortly after the report was published, Tenet Media announced privately to its staff that it was ceasing operations effective immediately.
Whoa, wait, where? When did he say that? Did he tweet it?
No, he just told me because he was watching. And he just told me that you didn't update and it wasn't there at the top. And I'm looking at the story.
I see it. Yeah. Shortly after this report was published, Tenet Media announced privately to its staff that it was ceasing operations effective immediately.
Yeah.
If you guys ever wonder why Libby's on her laptop during the show, she is actively always working.
Yeah.
Well, I was just talking to Andy.
So, Timcast, the company where we do the show, I'll give you a quick history. I started a YouTube channel a long time ago. Worked for a couple big media outlets. They paid me good sums of money. I worked for Disney and for Vice. Then I used that money to invest in my YouTube channel, which it grew and generated revenue. Carl Benjamin had me do a guest spot on his channel, which gave me a bunch of subscribers. Shortly after that, I went on Joe Rogan, got way more subscribers. Big YouTube channels make lots of money. Reinvested back into the company. The company grew substantially. So when Lauren Chen approached us about a deal, it was like, hey, we'd like to license your show for distribution. That's the gist of it. The show already existed. It's on youtube.com/Timcast. It has 1.3 million subscribers. And I was like, okay. And then that's it. It was not exclusive. This is absolutely insane that I don't know. I don't know. They fired her even. I got to say, it really does look like from this reporting, she's going to be charged. Her and Liam are going to face criminal charges.
There's another statement in the story, apparently.
What is it?
That Donovan sent a message to staff saying, as most of you may know by now, there's a federal investigation surrounding Tenet at the moment. There have been no indictments against us or the company. We've hired legal counsel and are working through the legal issues. We hope to provide more clarity soon. However, it is clear that given the nature of the investigation, we have no choice but to stop all work on Tenet. I do not foresee it coming back.
Absolutely insane. I mean,
crazy.
the DOJ indictment's fairly damning. It says that when they were looking for remittances and they didn't get a response, they Google searched time in Moscow.
That's pretty
That's a bold claim. But hey, these are allegations. I don't know what's true.
due process.
Yeah. And I have not talked to Lauren Chen after any of this stuff. And I think I only talked to her a couple times this year at all. And I think it was one time because she came on the show with Pearl Davis and we talked about dating and like marriage and stuff.
And she was here with Benny Johnson after that, I think.
She was here with Benny Johnson?
Yeah, she and Benny Johnson were here.
Man, I barely remember.
I think it is pretty funny though that if it's true that she Googled that, it's like, you know, that's the same thing that what Bob Menendez's wife did when they had the gold bars. They were like, oh, what to do with all these gold bars? It's like, if you're committing crimes, don't Google about what crime you're committing, because like they will find out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll be really interesting to see how this plays out. I mean, I think that it's just one of these things that I don't trust the DOJ. On the other hand, these are very serious allegations, and especially during election year, you know, to have the credibility of a lot of people who are openly discussing politics in a way that the Biden administration doesn't like come under scrutiny. You know, it's rough.
And the kind of bizarre thing is, you know, the media has always been saying that, you know, Trump is Putin's candidate, you know, Trump is pro-Russia. And, you know, you follow Lauren's Twitter feed and like she's been very critical of Trump from a more further right perspective. It's like I don't see how, you know, Russia gains or anything like that if this is all true. Like it's just kind of bizarre. It's like, you know, what do they gain from attacking Trump from the right other than, I guess, this general discord? But
I think Trump had a statement about it on Truth Social. Let's see if I can pull that one up. Blah blah blah. No, I don't know. He had some Truth Social posts, but the media's not covering it because it doesn't lend to their narrative. But here we are, man. I don't know if this is a pre-October surprise. Early voting is starting in what do you say, Pennsylvania?
Pennsylvania on the 16th.
North Carolina is coming up too.
Pennsylvania is the one that matters.
Pennsylvania's first, too.
Yeah, that's a very big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there could be more October surprise, you know? I mean,
September surprise.
yeah, well, we've got the September surprise. Maybe they're just going to keep ramping it up, you know?
Yeah, I almost feel like it's not going to be a surprise. It's just going to be like hit after hit after hit after hit after hit until the
Well,
election.
that has been like, for people who work in news, it has been ludicrous. It has been just absolutely insane. Like, every single day is a collection of crazy stories, none of which have anything to do with each other. So you're just constantly like assigning writers, like, you do this crazy thing. How about you do this crazy thing? They're all breaking. You have to come up with new words for breaking. You know, just in, new crazy thing happened. And you have school shootings. That poor kid, you know, like it looks like he was abused by his dad on top of everything else.
I'm just looking at all the stuff that's going on, and I'm really worried about what happens like mid-November and December. Sounds scary.
Yeah, and also terrible for the victims, obviously. I don't mean to just say. I always feel bad for the person who has so much trouble that they give into evil. I always feel bad for that person.
Yeah, well, I'm worried about what happens to the stability of this country.
Yeah, for sure.
Moving post, after November 5th.
Yeah.
2 months, 61
happened?
days.
Yeah.
And up until that point, I feel like the stuff that we're seeing now, this is absolutely, these allegations are absolutely crazy. And, man, I have no idea. I feel like what's to come is going to get nuts. Because I've been saying this for a while now. They're going to go after anti-establishment channels. I don't know.
Well, it's a concern. And they certainly didn't have a problem going after Steve Bannon.
Yep. And Peter Navarro.
And, War Room's doing a really good job holding it together until he gets back. But
Now we've got,
When
Lichtman
does he
saying
get
Harris
released?
wins.
I think it's like the end of October, right?
Yeah, right before the election. Lichtman's got it for Harris. Silver's got it for Trump. They're both subject to change, I guess. The question then becomes, what happens on November 6th?
What happens? I guess.
What do you think?
I think it totally depends on who wins.
Well, I know. That's the question. I mean, is there going to be a winner?
yeah. I also think, like, if it is like a very tight electoral college outcome, like I could see just chaos, violence the day after, and especially if states are like very marginal and they're swapping because of mail-in ballots or something like that, it's gonna be hectic. But if it's clear one way or the other, I think most people will. I think there'll be some frustration, some anger, but I don't know if it devolves into like mass chaos.
Have you seen the HAVV numbers? The Help America vote verification stuff?
No.
Have you updated those?
I don't know. Let's pull up the week ending August 31st and take a look at Missouri. Whoa! Holy crap! Is this true? Week ending August 31st, 2024. Let's zoom in. Are you familiar with HAVV?
I am not.
This is the Help America vote verification system. What you're seeing here, and we'll start with these numbers, Alabama, total transactions. This is 3,041 voter registration attempts from individuals who don't have IDs. What they do is the DMV or the Motor Vehicle Administration will submit the registration application along with the last four of their social, name and birthday, to the SSA, who will then confirm if the person exists. Alabama had 3,041 total attempts. 815 of those registrations did not come back matched to a Social Security name and number. 2,226 did. 1,943 were dead. Were alive. 283 were dead. So that's over a 1 week period. Arizona had 53,200 voter registration attempts without IDs.
Wow.
Missouri had 36,769 people attempt to register to vote without an ID. 237 were dead. 3,141 did not match the SSA database.
Could a lot of these be voter registration drives? So with a voter registration
Millions per month? I mean, or hundreds of thousands per month?
Well, in Arizona, I know Charlie Kirk just did like a huge voter registration drive.
And 53,000 of the people that he registered didn't have IDs?
Well, it's not that they didn't have IDs. It's that when you do a voter registration drive, you maybe like check the ID, but you don't submit their voter registration with their ID because they take their ID back.
If you put your ID down and you write your ID information, you're good. This is for people who don't have one, who submit specifically with their Social Security numbers.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that's. I don't remember the last time I looked at a voter drive form.
What's interesting is why that's probably so high, because I was kind of shocked to see that number. Is in Missouri on the November ballot we have an abortion referendum. So I know Democrats are doing voter registration drives all across the state to try and make sure that margin goes their way.
Does Missouri have early voting?
Here's Missouri, February.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
Here's Missouri, February 17th of this year. 78,421 registration attempts without an ID. 23,253 of those attempts were from dead people.
That is crazy. Why are there dead people registering to vote?
The argument that people say makes the most sense is that this is the reapplication of existing voter registration forms to check as a voter roll cleanup thing. I don't know that makes sense. If the point of this, SSA says it's only for voter registrations with IDs, this would mean the state's abusing the system. And I don't know the mechanism by which they submit, but my understanding, according to the website, is you submit the form, the voter registration form, with the information about their Social Security number, name, and date of birth. I don't see how Missouri doing voter roll cleanup would take a stack of voter registration forms from when. I mean, if we're talking about 23,253 people who are deceased, that means they must have been registered for quite some time, right? I can't imagine those are murder victims. They're people that have old age.
Yeah.
Why would the state still have all their forms? Still have all the is the argument
really
then,
slow? Do you have, bureaucracy is really slow?
But how does that explain 23,000 dead people in Missouri? The explanation may be that they filled out new application forms for everybody on the voter rolls and then submitted them to see if they were still alive so they could remove them later. Seems kind of circuitous.
Are these people who submitted a voter registration and are now registered, or these were just people who submitted registration and then got flagged?
So all this checks is whether they have a Social Security number.
Okay.
So the way it works is total non-matches. So let's do Alabama for the week of February 17th, 1,092 transactions. These are the DMV submitting the form saying, here are the people who tried to register. 210 did not match.
Okay.
So that person likely will not get registered.
Yeah.
882 did match. They likely will go back and the state will be like, okay, these names are good.
Okay.
And however, 276 were dead. So they'd likely say, okay, take that name. This person can't register. They're dead. The question is, how does a dead person try to register to vote?
Yeah.
The argument could be that they register and then die, and the application was sitting on the desk for a few weeks or something. But 23,000?
Yeah.
Did you guys have a
That's
very
absurd.
specific plague hit suddenly?
No. I will say this. This is something that I need to talk to. So my state senator actually won the primary, and arguably the most conservative one of the 8 candidates that were running for Secretary of State of Missouri. So he will be the next Secretary of State, and I need to talk to him about this. Yeah, and this is eye opening, but yeah, it's disturbing. In 1 week, 23,000 dead people. That's absurd.
The argument is that it's voter roll cleanup, and that's the only thing that really makes sense. But
Yeah.
I don't understand the mechanism by which you use a voter registration system for voter roll cleanup. It seems like a leap.
Yeah.
What's the other argument? That someone tried to register a bunch of names they found and they were dead people? I mean, that's crazy too.
Yeah. Well, one, and this is me spitballing, one thing I could think is, as they're gathering signatures to put things on the ballot, they cross-reference that to see if they're registered voter or not. So maybe they find out that these signatures are either dead, like these people are not alive or anything like that, and then they eliminate them. But still, I don't.
No idea.
Yeah, that is bizarre. It's definitely something that we need to look into.
Let's jump to this story from SCNR. White House denounces Tucker Carlson for recent viral interview. Carlson, they're warmonger freaks. They don't get the moral high ground. The White House has condemned Tucker Carlson for a recent viral interview he conducted with a historian. On Monday, the independent broadcaster released an interview with podcaster Daryl Cooper, whom Carlson referred to as the best and most honest popular historian in the U.S. The viral episode, which is approaching 30 million views on X, has resulted in Cooper's Martyr Made podcast topping the iTunes charts and surpassing Carlson's podcast. Wow. During the wide-ranging 2-hour interview, Cooper offered a heterodox view of Winston Churchill. Quote, I think maybe I'm being a little hyperbolic, maybe, but I thought Churchill was the chief villain of the Second World War, Cooper said. He didn't kill the most people. He didn't commit the most atrocities. He was primarily responsible for that war becoming what it did. In a statement issued to CNN, the Biden administration Senior Deputy Press Secretary Andrew Bates said giving a microphone to a Holocaust denier who spreads Nazi propaganda is a disgusting and sadistic insult to all Americans, to the memory of over 6 million Jews who were genocidally murdered by Adolf Hitler, to the service of the millions of Americans who fought to defeat Nazism, and to every subsequent victim of anti-Semitism. Hitler was one of the most evil figures in human history and the chief villain of World War II, full stop. The Biden-Harris administration believes that trafficking in this moral rot is unacceptable at any time, let alone less than 1 year after the deadliest massacre perpetrated against the Jewish people since the Holocaust, and at a time when the cancer of anti-Semitism is growing all over the world. I gotta say, I have not listened to the full interview that Tucker Carlson did. I did see a lot of people saying that there was a mix of conservative and liberal personalities misquoting what Cooper had been saying in the podcast. I would say this, for my opinion on this, I think it's silly to say Churchill was the chief villain. I understand the point he's trying to make. Responsibility in war is not, it's not, we're not facing comic book villains, but I gotta be honest, like, dude, Hitler was the chief villain. And I know there's a lot of people who are going to make arguments about the heterodox nature of things like, in this.
Yeah, it's called relativism. And it's,
Yeah,
it's
no.
This is a
Churchill,
a postmodern, deconstructivist approach to history from a right-wing perspective instead of a left-wing perspective, but it's still exactly
Right.
the same thing.
Yeah, look, my view is you absolutely can criticize Churchill. I read a decent amount about, I read Cooper's thread on why he's critical of Churchill, and I'm like, look, my opinion is that he's critical of Churchill for waging war on a country at war, and he didn't like the tactics used. Hitler killed people for psychotic reasons. Like that was like a psychotic. I mean, look, the argument, I suppose, outside of what he's saying is if you drive people to the brink of starvation and insanity and demoralization and conquest and then let it stew, they will bubble up and go insane. But to claim that Churchill is the chief villain, I think is just not correct.
Yeah, I agree.
Did you guys listen to the podcast?
So I listened to clips of it. I didn't listen to the full thing. But I just looking at it through analyzing history, I think a lot of Americans don't understand. The Allies did commit some atrocities, and then also the fact that the Allies, stood with Stalin, and Stalin committed, the Holodomor, a lot of these different, genocides. And I think because they were largely with the Allies, and the Allies have kind of wrote a lot of the history, and it's kind of the founding mythos of our, modern politics. I think it is important to kind of look critically at that. I wouldn't agree that Winston Churchill was the main villain of World War II, but I as with any political leader, they're not perfect, and I think it is kind of important to look at.
Even
everything that they
Mussolini
did.
was worse than Churchill.
So Carlson responded saying, the fact that these lunatics have used the Churchill myth to bring our country closer to nuclear war than at any moment in history disgusts me and should terrify every American, he wrote in a text message to the outlet. They're warmonger freaks. They don't get the moral high ground. Though Cooper has not directly addressed the White House statement, he mentioned the controversy in an interview in a Thursday evening X-Post. The furor over my Tucker interview is straight replay of the Very Fine People hoax. Totally mendacious, claiming the literal opposite of what was actually said. Too shameless to care that people can easily go see the video themselves. During his interview with Carlson, Cooper clarified his comments, saying that, this is a quote, and the next thought comes to your head is that, you're saying Churchill was the chief villain, therefore his enemies, Hitler and so forth, were the protagonists, right? They're the good guys. If you think he's a villain, that's not the case. That's not what I'm saying. He says, Germany, look, they put themselves in a position, and Adolf Hitler is chiefly responsible for this, but his whole regime was responsible for it, that when they went into the East in 1941, they launched a war where they were completely unprepared to deal with the millions and millions of prisoners of war, of local political prisoners and so forth, that they're going to have to handle. They went in with no plan for that, and they just threw these people into camps, and millions of people ended up dead there. Cooper then argued that components of the traditional narrative of World War II have become akin to modern American mythology. I suppose if the greater point he's saying is that Adolf Hitler, in his idealistic fervor and desire for seizing back land and expanding German territory, captured, imprisoned, and then killed millions of people. Like, I don't know. I don't really. I just feel like it's pulling hairs. I suppose the argument is there are stupid people who don't understand history and think it's some can't stand to hear about the laying out what happened and how it happened. I feel like once you read all of it, you still conclude that Hitler is the bad guy. I don't know that he's saying
I feel
Churchill
that way
is.
too. I think Hitler is probably the evil person.
Probably.
There's probably others, like Mussolini wasn't great. Stalin was a terrible guy. That being said, you need allies in war. War doesn't mean you team up with your best friends and go on an expedition. War means that you're struggling to save your nation from, obliteration and to save your allies from obliteration. And you have to make really hard choices. I know this is not a popular thing to say, but I listened to a bunch of interviews with Condoleezza Rice after she left the Bush administration. And I think she is a really interesting, I think she's very intelligent, and I think she thinks things through all the way, which is not something that happens very much anymore. But she said, she was asked about the Iraq War, right? Which was, in my view, a really bad idea. And she said, we had to decide between several really bad alternatives. There were no good options, right? In World War II, were there a bunch of really good options and the U.S. and Britain just took the ones that were the worst? I don't think there were good options available. And I think that is important to remember, that when you're facing this kind of thing, which we could be facing ourselves, are there a lot of good options available when it comes to Israel or when it comes to Ukraine? Every option leads to some kind of death and destruction and horribleness. Right. Every single option. Getting involved is bad. Not getting involved also leads to bad things. It doesn't matter what you do, which option you pick, something bad is going to happen. Whether it's, immediately for your nation or somebody else's, or for your allies, or for all of the children, or whatever. Pick your victim class.
I'll put it in a modern context, I suppose. I can't, because I'm not going to sit here and speak about, I don't know. Look, I read Cooper's thread on Churchill, and it's very interesting, where he makes the points that blockade, starvation created desperation and anger and a generation of angry young men and all of these things. He didn't say that literally, but it's the general idea, I suppose. And among other things, that wasn't the principal message. But you look at right now with Ukraine, and I think it's fair to say that Putin's the bad guy. But I don't think it's fair to say that his Putin's goal is the conquest of Europe, that he takes Ukraine, he's going to take Poland. I think that is exaggeration. Those are exaggerations to justify foreign, namely U.S. and NATO involvement in Ukraine. Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine. He should not have. The U.S. was engaged in a soft power battle that it was winning, and that's preferable to hot conflict.
Yeah.
Vladimir Putin decided hot conflict was better because he didn't want to lose a soft power battle, and I think that is wrong. He could the original. So what happens in Ukraine is the East and the West were offering up money and opportunity. Putin said to Ukraine, if you do a deal with the EU, we will cut off our trade agreement with you. And then Ukraine said, okay, then we're going to go with the wealthier Western European and NATO. And so Putin got pissed and was like, what? Well, yeah. And his argument was, the Russian argument, that if Ukraine opened up trade to Western Europe, those products would then freely flow into Russia and disrupt their economy. So we had to cut them off. And then by doing so, lost the soft power battle, offered up nothing in return to the Ukrainians, and then decided to instead invade. I think that was a stupid thing to do. And I think he's a guy who tries to hold on to power for a long time. That being said, that doesn't justify U.S. funding a conflict in a country we have nothing to, like, that is not us. And the argument they've made is that, well, they may join NATO. I mean, why are we expanding on Russia's border as it is and creating this potential problem? That being said, I can understand soft power versus hot conflict, but why are we now, after this is all going down, deciding that we are going to be involved militaristically in this conflict, or that I or any other American should support the funding of hundreds of billions of dollars going to this country that is not one of our allies?
There's also this crazy thing now. You know how the U.S. is giving. Oh, you have a fly on your head. There, it's gone away.
There's always a fly in here.
Yeah, I just didn't want to.
There's two of them.
You know, there.
Because we have the door, the everything's open.
Yeah. But the
Now it's on your head.
Oh, come on. You know I don't like bugs. What was I going to say? Oh, so Ukraine's taking all of these weapons from the U.S., but they also put together all these deals with the help of the U.S. to have defense and munitions companies in Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And so now they're making their own weapons. And you know what they're doing with those? They are selling them out of the country.
Ukraine is?
Yeah. This is something we covered at Human Events the other day.
Wow.
And it was just like, so you're taking our stuff.
Well,
You're taking a bunch of contracts so that you can build your own stuff.
It's the business for.
And now you're selling that. Well, you have anyway.
We know about the fortifications that never got built.
Yes.
I mean, it's crazy that you have people on X that are just blindly putting up the Ukrainian flags and saying, woo, we're going to support them no matter what. And I'm like, we gave a bunch of money to these companies that were fake. The government knew, and then the money was taken by criminals and they ran. Mm-hmm. It is insanity.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think these European countries are getting away with murder because we already know they don't pay the dues that they should be paying for NATO. We're paying all the money. And then, okay, there's conflict in their backyard. And what are we doing? We're sending American weapons and spending, I think it's now over $100 billion to fight this war when, it's their backyard. They should be fighting it. They should be coughing up the money. But, once again, I guess America, ends up always kind of being the sucker and paying for everything. But.
Yeah, that is what happens, isn't it? Somehow.
Yeah.
And we just pay for everything. I hate that for us.
Do you think Americans look positively at NATO or no?
When I'm talking to voters, I know people don't bring it up, but I think more and more people are not looking positive on it because it's like, there's a reason why Trump's comments resonated with people because it's absolutely true. We are the world's piggy bank, and everyone is just taking us to the cleaners. And most of these establishment politicians are totally willing to let that happen because they're getting money on the side, they're getting something of a kickback, and they're totally willing to sell us out just for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
Indeed, and it's kind of wild to me is that I remember during the Iraq War stuff. If you didn't support the Iraq War, you were with the terrorists. You're either with us or you were with the terrorists. And there was this fervent zealotry pro-war. And a lot of good people signed up and enlisted because they thought this was the right thing to do, that America needed us. We were attacked and we had to answer. And then we ended up in Iraq for some reason.
Yeah, J.D. Vance and Ron DeSantis both signed up.
For that reason.
Yeah.
And now it's funny because it was the conservatives at the time. It was under Bush. But now it's the Democrats that are pro-war.
But they're not enlisting. I'll underscore that.
True.
But they're like neocons. And Kamala Harris's DNC speech was like a neocon written speech. The
funny thing is in that Lichtman thing where he says won't affect major change or whatever, and then he claims that she will. or whatever the thing was. They're claiming that Harris, if she gets elected, will affect major change. Maybe it's because she wants to build a wall and no tax on tips.
Right.
That is major change, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe
There you
that's
go.
the one.
All right,
Major
everybody.
change for politicians.
Right.
Exactly.
You do very little and then, pat yourself on the back.
And someone pointed out, too, that the primary challenge is a reference only to the convention. But I think these things, I don't know if his prediction model applies appropriately because it's not following the same pattern.
Yeah, it's totally a lot of unprecedented stuff.
Right. We'll see. We'll see. All right, we're going to go to Super Chat. So smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, and become a member at timcast.com to support our work directly because that's what makes this whole machine operate. And when you become a member, you get access to our members-only uncensored show, which will be coming up at 10 p.m. tonight. Not so family-friendly, but always fun. We'd love to see you there. Smash the like button, as I said. Let's read. Ty Groot says, first Super Chat, you win, sir. Congratulations. Spark says on the 5 today, Jessica Tarlov name-dropped him and said he made $400,000 directly from the Russians to peddle propaganda. Yeah, I know. I actually DM'd Jesse Waters. I was like, dude, that's massively defamatory. Like, that's not true at all. The indictment literally says that we were deceived. And as I stated already, I've been contacted by the FBI as a victim, and they've requested an interview. I can't say much more than that. All right, let's go. Let's go. Big Cheese says, Tim, remember Flynn when talking with the FBI? Ginger McIsaac says, get your sweet bamboo switches ready. The Panda Express bus is out and about, full of yummy platitudes and regional dialects for any taste sensation. Indeed. Imperial Navy says, I find it interesting that they put out the DOJ indictment right after you said you're suing the Kamala Harris campaign. I don't know. I don't think it's related. Don't know. Raymond G. Stanley Jr. says, Tim, they're too easy to F with. A simple hi, mom, and they lose their freaking minds. We cannot afford to lose these lemmings have any. We cannot afford to let these lemmings have any more say in things. I tweeted, hi, mom. That's it. I also tweeted that I'm pro-war now. I'm for it. I want to make sure that's clear. All of my statements during the show.
One call from the FBI, all of a sudden, change
War is
ways.
good. War is good. We must have more. Let's go. Lurch says, Linkin Park has a new album and a female singer. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I don't know. I heard that. A female singer for Linkin Park. It doesn't seem like the same band.
I never listened to them. I have no idea.
They got good music. They were huge, man.
I didn't even know they were still performing this time.
Oh, yeah. They never stopped.
Wow.
Yeah, I think they just, I think they have another vocalist. I think he did both. I'm not sure. I like Linkin Park. I mean, their old stuff in the 2000s was pretty good.
Yeah.
All right. Paul Tascalo says, Tim's reputation gets smeared by low information media goons claiming he got paid by Russia directly. It's almost like that was the ultimate plan to harm prominent independent and MAGA voices via a Russia hoax. I don't know. Look, I'll say this. Outside of that context, we have sponsors. Like, I get hit up by people who are like, are you interested in this company, like, putting their logo on your thing? And, like, what do people think we do? Do we deep dive into these companies and run criminal background checks on their founders, figure out who their VCs and investors are? So the only thing I can really say is when Lauren Chen, who everybody knew and had a big prominent channel and worked for The Blaze, is going to people being like, we'd like to license content. It's like, oh, okay, sure. And then people are acting like, I'm going to say this because there's a lot that I can't elaborate on for the most part. Travis Kelce just got a $100 million contract for his podcast. Like, people need to understand what's going on in the podcast industry and how much money people are getting paid for this stuff. And his podcast is not even one of the biggest in the world. I think he gets like, and he does one every week or other week, and he gets like a million hits. Timcast IRL gets, I think, a total of like 3.5 million. So just consider those numbers. That's all I can say. All right. There you go. And then, you can infer. All right. Super Heavy Booster says, Rep Chris is single and a good-looking guy. Mary is single and pretty. Just saying, we're all thinking it.
You're all Catholics, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, only Catholic in my family. I'm a convert as of 2020.
That's a very JD Vance of you.
Yes, very JD. And I kind of look like him too. When I was at the RNC, I think it was like 14 times that people came up to me like, "Oh, you look just like JD." It's like, well, thanks. But yeah.
Legama says, Dear Tim, I agree with you about 2/3 of the time. I think you are misguided about foreign policy. What am I wrong about? But I know your stance comes from a place of concern for the U.S. and its people. You are no traitor. Please take my money for the eventual defamation lawsuits, and I encourage you to file against certain media personalities. I guess people are saying that Breaking Point's defamed me. The 5 did, right? Like, I'll just say it again. The DOJ indictment literally says that we were tricked. There was a sophisticated scheme to manipulate us, and that's it, I guess. I don't know. All right, where are we at? Where we here? Harlan the Human says, turned 40 today. Can I get a birthday shout out from Hannah Claire? Ever since I was a kid, I thought girls with widow peaks were really cool. Also, Libby rocks.
Well, happy birthday from me and my widow's peak. It's always been a favorite feature of my head. It's from my genetics, so I guess I made it myself, and I hope you have a great year.
Happy birthday.
Dark Truth says, Tim, he says, it doesn't take a genius to predict Harris will, quote, win. Nobody is talking about how Trump is supposed to defeat the fraud machine in November. Yeah. Ted Thorne says, they said Kamala has no scandals. She and the Dems committed a coup over the nominated incumbent president.
That's
seriously.
A very good point.
Yeah. Awake Not Woke says, Jessica Tarlov just defamed you by name on the 5. Please look it up. Just happened. Jessica. I saw that. I was watching. I watched the 5. Greg Gutfeld interjected a little bit. I can't remember exactly what he said, but Jesse made a joke about something like, I think he said, are they hiring when he saw the numbers or whatever. I just want to let the Fox cast members know. Have you ever Google searched the salaries of primetime Fox hosts? Wasn't Tucker getting like reportedly $25 to $30 million? Hannity got like 60.
I don't know.
Hannity made more than Tucker?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Hannity's been the top guy forever.
That's crazy.
Tucker's new. But I don't know. You want to Google search cable TV news salaries? I mean, these people get paid insane money, and their shows aren't even as big. I mean, we get more key demo viewers than most of these people.
Jesse Waters gets $5 million a year, apparently.
$5 million. So he's
So he wants to be hired somewhere for less.
no, it's the same amount.
Oh, is it the same?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
That's funny. That's why they're acting like they don't make this much money. They make more than this.
Yeah.
It's wild. Absolutely wild. I will say this too, for anyone who's wondering, if that amount of money shocks you, you should hear the offers I get from major network corporations, like major corporations and the stuff they offer. You know? Woof. The people who, yeah, I'll leave it there. All right, let's go. George says, my family's business is a diesel truck repair shop. We've been abnormally slow this summer. Other shops we've talked to are also slow. Most parts suppliers said their sales are down 20 to 40% from last year. Yeah, you know, when they revised down the job numbers by nearly 1 million, I wonder if we actually are in a recession, but they're just putting out fake numbers.
Yeah.
Did you find their salaries?
I didn't find a list.
Oh, you couldn't find one?
I can look up specific people if you want.
Let's do Fox News host salaries. I mean, you found Jesse Waters. I don't know if these are real.
Well, I looked up Jesse Waters.
Oh, you looked him up specifically?
Yeah.
Let's see. There's an image.
It was the name I knew how to spell the best.
And these websites aren't always correct. So one website says Hannity gets 45, Brett Baer gets 20, Laura Ingraham gets 15, Cavuto gets 7, Gutfeld 7, Waters 5, Sandra Smith 3, Pirro gets 3, Hemmer gets 3, Bream gets 3, Martha McCallum gets 2, and Perino gets 1. Don't know if that's true or not. These websites usually are not correct. They say Hannity's net worth is $250 million. I usually don't believe these things anyway because they're
The
not.
Street has that too. They're saying Diane Sawyer's from CBS earns $22 million a year, and she's a net worth of $80 million. It's hard to say though.
What source was that one?
That's thestreet.com.
I've got MSN.com. And what do they say? Wait, what? There's
George
nothing-
Stephanopoulos, estimated salary of $15 million, estimated net worth of $40 million.
Yeah, I've got MSN.com. Hannity gets 40. They've got an ad. Perino gets 6. Okay, Brett Baer, they say is 15.
Anderson Cooper's $12 million, apparently.
Wow. What is this from? This seems old.
Mine's from
was a month
June
ago,
of
yeah.
2024.
Yeah, this one says Jesse Waters gets 2 million. Megyn Kelly gets 45 million. Whoa.
Wow.
But was that before? Yeah, while she was there at Fox, they reported it as 45 million. NBC offered her 69 million. What?
Rachel Maddow's $30 million, apparently.
Yeah, that one I think was big public news when they announced that deal with her.
That's a lot of money for her, and she still can't afford a shirt, you know?
Yeah. Kilmeade gets 4 at this claims. I mean, look, let me just say.
10.
Like, I think people should look this up. Oh, wow. MSN's claiming Gutfeld's getting 24 million.
Wow.
Because he's hosting Gutfeld now, which is beating Colbert.
Yeah.
He gets millions. So
That's wild.
yeah. So people who never Google search the salaries of these primetime shows, and let me just say this to you guys, those shows are on the decline. Podcasts are on the rise. Travis Kelce getting offered $100 million for his show. I mean, come on. And look at the numbers that Rogan's pulling in. We do like 3.5 million per episode. So
Yeah, that's wild.
yeah. And
Tim pays
sponsors
me
aren't.
$45 million per episode.
Per episode, that's right.
No, I'm just kidding. That doesn't happen at all.
That would be really cool. I would ask you.
I would
for
love
it.
it if that was the
Yeah.
case.
Ted Thornton says, in the Lex Friedman interview, Trump admitted he lost by a whisker in 2020. He is catching on that being humble will put him in the White House. Yeah, that's smart. He did lose by a whisker. So whatever people think about fraud or ballot harvesting or whatever, Trump was very close to winning the Electoral College. Should the Republicans adapt their strategy and prepare for what's going to happen or what may happen, then they have a good chance of winning, unless the Democrats are one step ahead of them already, which may be the case. It's time to stand, says Tim. Have you read How Civil Wars Start and How to Stop Them? I've heard you reference it, but I imagine you calling her out for the obvious and blatant left-wing globalist propaganda. Is that the former, CIA lady? I don't think I've referenced her book specifically, but maybe the articles about her. And we've also had Stephen Marsh on a couple times, who's written two books. What is it? What was the first one called? The Next Civil War or something? But he had one called The Last Election. And we agree on a lot of the issues, but I think he's substantially ill-informed about what's going on publicly. He says the right is doing these things. The right will foment civil war. And he's hyper-focused on these fringe stories that aren't really prominent in media of like sovereign citizens and weirdos in the country doing weird things that don't impact anything culturally. Whereas I'm concerned of like these large-scale anti-Israel protests that have been going on all year. But, whatever. Let's go. Red Wing Blackbird says, did Star Trek DS9 predict the future with the episode Past Tense 1 and 2? Mark me safe from the Bell riots. Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, that was just the other day.
Yeah, they're supposed to, according to the Star Trek lore, there's supposed to be major riots, right? What happens?
So, I mean, how in depth do you want me to go?
You're a
Lightly?
Trekkie?
Shocking. Anyway, so Cisco and Dr. Bashir get thrown back in time, and they end up in the Sanctuary District, which is a place where they put essentially people who are unemployed and have not been able to find work. And they say that they're going to help them find work, but they don't actually. They just call them, untouchables, essentially. And so what happens is some of the untouchable guys decide to hold up. It's not real. It's like a bank within the Sanctuary District or some kind of it's not a bank. It's like a little admin office, like the unemployment office. And they decide to hold it up. And in history books, which Cisco knows, this guy, Jeremiah Bell, I think it was, tried to quell the holdup and save the hostages. But instead, when they go back in time, Jeremiah Bell gets killed. And so Cisco takes over and he's like, I will be Jeremiah Bell and fix everything and save the hostages and whatever. And so it happens. But yeah, there were riots inside the Sanctuary District where people were saying, we deserve dignity and respect and you can't keep us in here anymore. And we just want jobs and to have a normal life.
Well, that's not till next year in our world. When all of the people they've brought into the country illegally and the displaced members of these local communities get angry and they can't handle what's going on, then maybe...
or maybe it's just going to start in Aurora, Colorado instead of San Francisco.
Yeah. What's really crazy about that Aurora story is these leftist media outlets saying it's fake news, it's propaganda, Tucker Carlson's lying. And the police are like, please be warned that there are gangs, and here's the gang that's here. And they've been talking about it for a year.
And the mayor of the city, going on all these news stations and talking about it. And it's just it's like they almost just have to just lie about it because it's they have no way of defending it. They're just like, oh, yeah, it's a conspiracy. It's all fake. And it's like.
Meanwhile, if they talked about it, they could potentially keep people safe.
Yeah.
Instead, they'd rather keep their own perspective of America safe.
Yeah. It's absurd.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Let's grab some more super chats. Sean Hanley says, as someone who goes to college in Scranton, PA, don't let the media fool you about Northeast PA being a Democrat stronghold. I've seen about 4 times more Trump signs than Kamala signs. Pennsylvanians want Trump. Well, all right. Let's hope that's the case.
Well, in 61 days, we'll see.
Barely a Millennial says, the jail situation has not floated to the back of my mind. Rather, I just don't want to think about it. It's extremely depressing to me.
Yeah.
Koroag says Libby is onto it. They put him in MCC, use HR 8081 to remove Social Security, Secret Service from him. It said SS. And Epstein 2.0 happens. We know the play. It's written all over the faces in the books. Wouldn't be surprised if it happened this way.
It's scary.
Very scary.
Yeah.
And we'll know in like 2 weeks, right? What's going to happen?
Yeah. When is it? What, the 18th?
18th.
Yeah.
Oh, now I remember which lawyer it was. What's his name? From Bay Ridge.
I can picture him. I don't know why I can't remember his name right now.
He was a nice guy.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Barely a Millennial says, I loathe finding out new undercover stuff. It's good. It's true. The transparency, but there are never consequences, and it's incredibly frustrating. That I get. Yep. Man. That's creepy. All right. What is this? Dreamcast Tonight says, Tim Waltz is the other Lebowski. His tagline should be, get a job, sir, while stealing millions from a children's charity. What is that? The other Lebowski?
The other Lebowski, you know, the Big Lebowski with was it Jeff Daniels? So there's Jeff Daniels is Lebowski, and then there's the rich guy whose name is also Lebowski.
Oh, I get it.
And so
They mix them up.
Jeff Daniels is like, no, I'm the other Lebowski dude.
And then doesn't like the guy pee on his carpet or something?
Yeah, and it really tied the room together.
I barely remember that movie, man. All right, where we go. Triton54 says, you're asking the wrong questions, Tim. Commander-in-Chief only returns salutes already rendered. Who cares if she returns it? She's a moron. My question is, why are the Marines saluting her in the first place? Do they not salute the VP? Honest question. I don't know.
Do they?
I don't know. I don't know what the protocol is.
Yeah,
Let's check
I
it
wouldn't
out.
know.
What is this? Jimmy says, Tim Waltz had the highest long-term care center death rates in the country, higher than Cuomo.
Wow.
Wow.
That's pretty crazy. Because Cuomo's about to have to talk about this again, right?
Yeah.
He's getting called up in front of Congress.
Yeah.
Vice
All right.
presidents don't have to return salutes,
But
nor do presidents.
so that means the Marines have to salute them?
Yeah.
I think
remember
she's just
remember
posturing
in
as trying to be
2021
presidential.
she did not return the salutes, and everyone was like, you didn't even return the salute. Bernie Carrick said that, former police commish, New York.
Bill Hoekstra says, remember the 5th of November. V for Vendetta. But that's an actual saying. The gunpowder treason and plot. That was Guy Fawkes. He wanted to install a Christian theocracy in the UK, and he wanted to blow up Parliament to do it. It's kind of weird that it's like, I don't know, leftists were celebrating it. It was largely leftists wearing the Guy Fawkes masks and protesting because they were using this pop culture image. And it's like, that guy was a Christian theocrat, and he wanted to overthrow the government for Christian theocracy.
Interesting.
And so, and my understanding is that Bonfire Night in the UK, some light the bonfires to celebrate that he failed, and some light them to celebrate that he tried. Yeah, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. All right. What have we here? Nevermind says, I turned 70 today, canceled Netflix, and will use that money to become a member here. I may be scraping by, but not eating cat food yet, and there's still a lot of fight left in me. Fight cubed.
Nice.
Thank you very much, sir. You head over to timcast.com, click join us, become a member. We are member supported. It's how we run the show over at timcast.com. All right. Raymond G. Stanley Jr. says, remember, PA says they'll take days to count the votes. Yep.
That's right. They said, don't be surprised if the results are not
I
available.
feel like
on
you
election
shouldn't be able
day.
to say that months out from the real election.
I think it's a little weird too. It seems like an admission of
You've
some
had
kind.
years to prepare for this, and yet you're already saying, well, we think we're going to be late. Not the best.
And granted, it's not a swing state, but like Washington just had its primary, and like I think like they were still counting like a week and a half after the election, and it's just like, we live in a first world country, and we can't figure out how to have results like within a day or like that night.
Especially for Pennsylvania, which has the earliest early voting period. Like, what are we doing, everybody?
Supposedly, I'm pretty sure that I read something that Pennsylvania like changed its law to where they're going to count mail-in and like absentee ballots like the morning of election day. So to try to minimize that, to try to minimize.
Does that
like, how
seem
long-
better or worse? I honestly can't tell
yeah.
you. You know, like
Yeah.
the fact that they'll just have these votes sitting there like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I feel like you should be counting them as they come in. If you're right.
Yeah, well, so
Otherwise, you're just like, no, we're storing these votes. We'll check them later. Absolutely, no one's going to look at them right now.
I know like some of the red states, what they do is like they don't open them, but they account for all of them because so they put them.
They
off
know
to the
how many
side.
ballots.
Yeah, exactly. So how and then basically if you haven't gotten it in by that point, it's just cut off. Like if you haven't submitted your mail in before the election day, they're just not going to take it. And that's a lot of issues, especially within 2020, where they said, oh well, if you postmark a mail-in ballot the day before, but it arrives like a week later, we'll still count it because it was postmarked before the election. And as far as I'm aware, there might have been some clamping down on that, but probably not even enough. But
You would think that voters from both sides would be against it taking days to have results, because if everyone's afraid of instability, wouldn't you want to have an answer as soon as possible? Like, why would it?
Yeah, you would think, but even in Missouri, I remember I wasn't in the legislature at the time, but like I remember when they passed the bill to just make sure that it was explicitly clear that you had to have a photo ID to go vote. And, Democrats got up and debated it and saying how racist, how bigoted it was. And it was just like, this should be common sense. Like you need to, present your driver's license to buy alcohol. And then, deciding who's going to run our government. It's just a terrible, atrocious
Yeah,
thing.
they never want to take away the ID thing when it comes to alcohol.
Yeah.
Or like lottery
Yeah.
tickets.
Yeah.
But is that not racist also then?
Yeah. It's
understand.
just absurd,
All right, what do we got here? John Jones says, Alan Lichtman's no primary contest key is a bit misleading. It only focuses on the convention vote, so technically it's true for Harris. That's the question. Is technically true good enough for his model? Because if it is, his model's garbage.
Yeah.
Like, we're not dealing with normal circumstances. Has there been since 1980 an election where something like this has happened?
I don't believe so. Yeah.
Isn't this is it the first time the president?
This is pretty unprecedented, in fact. It's very unprecedented. This is not the kind of thing that we do.
Yeah.
Except for now, apparently.
Except for now, apparently. Now, political parties can install a candidate who hasn't actually been elected or voted by anyone.
Shouldn't it have had to be Dean Harris by that logic? Like, at least he ran in the primary and got some votes.
Perhaps RFK.
But he had exited the Democratic primary at that point.
He exited the Democratic primary because the Democrats were waging legal warfare against him and making it impossible for him to run. That's why he exited.
Right. But what I'm saying is, like, during the primary, Dean Phillips actually garnered a certain number of votes. So therefore, he was second place in the primary. So even if she is the vice president, he's actually the heir apparent to the Democratic primary. Mm-hmm. Well, I wish he had put up more of a fight, because he was like, he ultimately endorsed Biden, but when he was running his resistance campaign, he was like, look, this guy's old. Like, he was hitting a lot of good talking.
Yeah.
All right, Warsage says, I know DS9 had the Bell riots, but in Next Generation, we find out about the Irish unification. LOL. That's right. For those that don't know, there's a reference made by Data in one of the episodes about the Irish unification of 2024, in which he explains that in this instance in history, terrorism was used to reunite Northern and Ireland and with Northern Ireland. I guess it's because of the Troubles at the time when they were writing the show. But nope, it's 2024 and they are not unified.
They do a reverse Troubles to bring them together.
Reverse Troubles, terrible.
Yeah. but I don't know if you guys saw, Conor McGregor supposedly running for president of.
He's
yeah.
Yeah, so maybe Ireland will be united under President McGregor.
What an arc to be a UFC fighter who then comes out, starts talking about politics amid this stabbing incident. He's also made a ton of money off of his whiskey brand, and then he's like, next step president. It is giving Donald Trump
a little Trumpy, yeah.
Dude, this is wild. Cultured Redneck says, Dave Ehrenberg, state attorney for Palm Beach County, called Tim a useful idiot twice on Megyn Kelly, and then stated Tim walked back his comments on Ukraine today, which made Dave Tim's useful idiot. Because I tweeted that thing upon...
but you were joking.
These people don't have the cognitive capabilities to understand what a joke is.
No, I don't think so.
And And it's better
And I
for
put
him.
the Ukrainian and Israeli flag in
Yeah.
my name.
It's better for him if you walked it back. Like he didn't read it as a joke because he doesn't want to.
I don't know that they have the ability to understand jokes.
Well, it's
No, I think he's self-serving.
It's like Putin had that thing where he was like basically joking, saying he wanted Kamala Harris to be
Right.
president because she's
Her infectious
good at
laugh.
laughing, yeah, or whatever, and that got picked up and run with as though it were serious by a number of outlets.
Yeah.
And we were looking at it and we were like, this seems like it's a joke, and you still have no idea what it is that he would advocate for.
I tweeted, I'm pro-war now. We must fund
Yeah.
Ukraine and Israel. And these people are going to be like, Tim Pool supports the war. And they're going to write it unironically, being like, these people don't understand. So it's like the RFK Jr. thing. When I'm in this Twitter spat back and forth, being like, stop insulting moderates to these conservatives. And then after like 4 or 5 tweets, I went, okay, fine, I'm voting for RFK Jr. now. And the media was like, wow, look at that. He's endorsed RFK Jr.
Yeah, you took a lot of
I can
you
see
caught
it
a lot
now.
of hell for that.
I can see it now on Twitter. Tim Pool, globalist, establishment shill, pro-war.
It's crazy. I mean, there are some people tweeting, I can't believe you're supporting Ukraine now. And it's just like, oh my
Oh my goodness, people.
He's
Yeah.
always supported Ukraine. He
Kind
talks
of
about it all the
sense of
time.
humor.
No, I'm just kidding. Obviously, if you can't tell what a joke is.
Well, I think Zelensky's crooked. I think I'm offended by him trying to come here and demanding our money for his war.
I hate that. And then how Kamala Harris and Nancy Pelosi, they like strung up the flag of Ukraine on the
That's
door of the house.
crazy to me.
And I was just like, you guys are literally, this is traitorous behavior. This is the people's house, and you don't have the right to do that in the people's house. That makes me so mad.
There should be like a consequence, right? I mean, you shouldn't be
And
able
then
to
Chuck
do that.
Schumer, and they're like waving their little Ukraine flags, on the little wooden stick, and they're like,
How many of them had the pocket square that was the Ukraine
right?
flag?
My goodness.
It's so
You guys know what
weird.
country we're supposed to represent?
I'll say this: even in the Missouri House, like there are Republicans that have Ukraine flag pins.
Why?
Yeah.
Are they actually Ukrainian?
No,
That's the only time I get
Yeah,
it. Like, if you
it's-
are actually Ukrainian, okay, you have
know-
a vested
but,
interest.
but like it's it's unreal. It's like you make state law for Missouri, and then
You know what the mistake? Look,
Right,
look,
that's
I'm
the
sorry.
thing.
Look, the deep state is bad at what they do, guys. Maybe some of you figured this already because hindsight is 2020. But you see, the Iraq and Afghanistan thing was off the heels was after 9/11, and this country was traumatized by planes crashing into buildings and killing 3,000 people and causing massive damage, and it hit the psyche of so many people, and that terror that people felt was exploited so that we would invade Afghanistan and Iraq. And Afghanistan, there's some argue there's more of a legitimate reason. I think it was still wrong. Iraq was completely nuts. That made no sense, that invasion. But people were scared and they were tricked. You see, the thing is, the deep state needed a false flag casus belli for Ukraine, but we didn't have it. So what they're doing now is they're flying the flags of a country no one knows or cares about and telling you to fall in line. And it's like, well, maybe, guys, if you try to false flag, maybe you can look at Operation Northwoods for some inspiration. Maybe then many Americans would have been more on board.
But you look at the beginning of the conflict, though, and just the decline of the public polling. Like, I remember when it first broke out, there were like even in like suburban Kansas City, where I'm from, is like there were a lot of Ukraine flags. Like it was shocking to me, and I think there was probably a majority of Americans that were pro-Ukraine, like right at the onset.
Yeah.
Because the media just gaslighting everyone, and it's just And I guess you're absolutely right to where the fact that there was no actual attack or conflict on Americans, Americans are only willing to be the piggy bank for so long, and they just see an endless supply of money flowing that way and nothing changing.
All right, everybody, we're going to go over to the members only show at timcast.com. So smash that like button, subscribe to this channel. And again, head over to timcast.com, click join us or click sign up, become a member, support our work. We need it now more than ever. We are 2 months out from the election and things are going to get spicy. You may have noticed they already are. And so if you think the show is good and worth keeping, then we definitely need you guys to be members. You can follow the show on Instagram at Timcast IRL. You can follow me personally on X at Timcast. Chris, do you want to shout anything out?
Yeah. I'm Chris Lonsdale, state representative from Missouri. You can follow me at Chris Lonsdale KC on Twitter and Instagram, or Chris Lonsdale for state rep and on Facebook.
Right on.
I'm Libby Emmons. You can find me on Twitter at Libby Emmons. And of course, you can check out everything we're doing at thepostmillennial.com and humanevents.com.
It's been so fun having you here, Chris, and always nice to see you, Libby. I'm Hannah Claire Brimlow. I'm a writer for scnr.com at Scanner News. Check out all of their work at Timcast News on the internet. It's a really cool team. Chris Bertman's there, Adrian Norman's there, Chris Garr. So I'm really glad to be a part of it. If you want to follow me personally, I'm on Instagram at hannahclaire.b. I'm on Twitter at hannahclaireb. Thanks for everything you guys do. You really are the backbone of the show, in my opinion. Have a good night.
We will see you all over at timcast.com. Thanks for hanging out.